Hiraku awakens earlier after dreaming of his demise in his world. He steps outside and greets everyone, mentioning that he never anticipated living such a dreamlike existence. As a spirit, Hiraku confronts the deity that oversees the world. The deity observes that he lived for 39 years, being betrayed by others and subsequently succumbing to a terminal illness. The deity resolves to offer him a second opportunity with a body that will not suffer from sickness, and expresses a desire to apologize, asking him if he has any wishes that could also be fulfilled. Hiraku expresses his desire to try his hand at farming. It receives permission from the agriculture deity to grant Hiraku the power of the supreme farming tool. Hiraku finds himself waking up in a forest and feels joyful to be healthy and to be able to move once more. He decides to embark on his farming journey there, contemplating how to utilize the supreme farming tool. The tool magically appears in his grasp, and Hiraku begins digging, noticing that he feels no fatigue whatsoever. He appreciates the softness of the soil and realizes he can cultivate excellent vegetables there. Hiraku then understands he must prioritize food and water and sets off to explore. He spots a large tree and decides to make it a point of reference and use it as a camp. He searches for a river but cannot locate any source of water. Hiraku then opts to dig in hopes of finding underground water. He summons his tool, which transforms into a shovel, and shortly after starting to dig, he discovers water. While preparing the area around the tree, Hiraku seeks food but finds nothing. Hiraku then notices a smaller tree that will eventually obstruct him and opts to fell it now. He summons his tool as an axe and narrowly avoids being crushed by the tree as he manages to cut it down with a single blow. He changes his tool into a hatchet and then slices the tree into smaller pieces. Before he realizes it, dusk is approaching, and he turns his tool into a magnifying glass. But the sun sets. With no method to ignite a fire, he carves a hollow into the large tree and conceals himself inside. Hiraku fashions some plates and cups. He realizes the moon gives sufficient light for him to see, but then observes that there are two moons, and surmises he must be in another world. In the morning, Hiraku keeps clearing the area around the large tree and cuts down additional trees. He feels it's time to find something to eat, and at that moment a huge monster rabbit attacks him, which Hiraku manages to kill with a single swing of his tool. After consuming it, he decides to construct a toilet and digs a sizable hole with an entrance and uses a tree trunk as a seat. Because he couldn't relax, he ends up building a small cabin around the toilet seat. Hiraku then begins cultivating the land and envisions what he could grow. Once he finishes, he realizes he doesn't have any seeds to plant anything. The next morning, he is astonished to notice that some plants have already begun to sprout, and he wonders if it is because of the tool. He resolves to build a wall and a ditch around the fields to protect them from the rabbits and other creatures. It takes him several days to finish. The plants grow more quickly, and Hiraku hopes that they are something edible and not just decorative flowers. Hiraku then constructs a hut, but since he struggles to lift the wood up, he digs inside of it to allow himself more vertical space. One day, he spots two dogs outside. As they appear a little rough and non-aggressive, he invites them in and offers them some meat from a boar he has just slain. He observes that one of them is pregnant, and after they have eaten, she begins experiencing birth pains. Hiraku realizes she is about to give birth and contemplates what actions to take. He ultimately decides to let them stay in his house while he retreats back to the tree hole for the night. In the morning, he checks on the dogs and notices that the female has given birth to 4 puppies. He provides them with more meat to celebrate this occasion. Hiraku thought the dogs would leave afterward, but they choose to stay. As they enjoy the hut, Hiraku decides to build himself a new home. Hiraku eventually grows some tomatoes and takes pleasure in them. The dogs go hunting and safeguard the premises for Hiraku. Hiraku wishes to construct a storehouse, cultivate more vegetables, and many other things. God chooses to check on Hiraku to see how he is doing, since he feels guilty for giving him a life suited for a sinner. During his observation, he discovers that he placed Hiraku in a perilous forest known as the Forest of Death, and recognizes that he has made another error. Hiraku realizes that while he is preparing the soil for farming, if he desires to plant a particular crop, that crop magically begins to grow. Hiraku is content with his life and acknowledges that it is thanks to the gods who granted it to him. He creates some statues of the 2 gods to express his gratitude. Hiraku decides to experiment with planting some fruits. As they grow, he enjoys playing with the dogs, recognizing that he would feel much lonelier without them. Since the dogs also assist him in navigating back to his camp, Hiraku is able to venture further into the forest and ultimately discovers a river. He plans to create a tunnel to bring water to his site, and first decides to construct a toilet near the river. Hiraku figures out that if he transforms his tool into a wheelbarrow, he can maneuver with it without tiring. He also expands his crop fields by adding more vegetables. He cultivates soybeans and wishes to consume them, but he lacks salt. As time goes by, the weather begins to turn cold. Observing snow on the mountains, Hiraku ponders how frigid it gets here. He resolves to start getting ready for winter by gathering food and firewood. A giant spider appears. However, it is friendly and makes a handkerchief for Hiraku. The spider then chooses to inhabit the large tree and enjoys eating potatoes. In return, the spider crafts him clothing using the animal pelts that Hiraku provides. With the addition of cloth, Hiraku feels more civilized, as he now possesses a comfortable bed, curtains, and clothes. Hiraku decides to name the spider Zabuton. The winter begins. Zabuton no longer descends from the tree, and Hiraku suspects he is hibernating. Hiraku experiences a sense of loneliness, but eventually summer arrives. The small dogs have grown up, and one day they depart, but they quickly come back along with companions. Shortly after, Zabuton appears as well and brings children with him. With more mouths to feed now, Hiraku opts to enlarge his crops once again. Zabuton sounds the alarm, and Kuro guides Hiraku into the forest. Kuro leads him to a little girl who is unclothed and caught in spider webs. The dogs and spiders are cautious of her, but when she calls for help, Hiraku chooses to assist her. As he approaches, she leaps and bites his neck, subsequently transforming into a young woman. Hiraku questions whether she is a monster. The dogs then assault her, and as they strike her, she reverts to a small girl once more. Hiraku ponders whether she is their adversary since she drank his blood, but the girl clarifies she isn't and needed to do that to regain her strength. As she expended too much energy, she cannot sustain her adult form or clothing. Hiraku wonders why the dogs attacked them, and she states she wished to take one of them. Feeling sorry for her, Hiraku permits her to take more of his blood so that she can recuperate. Hiraku brings her to his home. The girl is astonished to find a crop field within the forest, particularly with so many new crops. Hiraku offers her a tomato, which she enjoys and expresses interest in trying additional crops as well. The girl shares that her name is Rurushi, a vampire, and is thrilled to sample a variety of new vegetables. Ru explains that she is working on medical research and escaped after getting into a conflict with some nobles who attempted to seize her research. Since they continued to pursue her and she learned about this forest, she chose to hide here temporarily until things settled down, while also hoping to discover new plants to study. She is amazed that Hiraku is residing in such a perilous forest and has even tamed the creatures. He is also utilizing some unusual magic that enables him to create various tools, which excites her even further. Hiraku understands how exceptional his opportunity is, since this is the first individual he has encountered. Since it might take longer to find someone else, Hiraku chooses to ask Ru to remain and live with him. Ru attempts to clarify that there are people pursuing her and that she is a vampire, but Hiraku remains indifferent. Hiraku articulates that he came here to be alone as he struggles with social interactions, but now he recognizes that he does not wish to be solitary and is uncertain about how much more he can endure. Ru consents, explaining that she does not actually have a place to go, even though she feels shy about his suggestion. The following morning, Ru appears a bit younger. Hiraku is intrigued, and she clarifies that in this state, he will refrain from making physical contact with her, to which Hiraku concurs. Hiraku states his next intention is to cultivate some sweet potatoes. He also mentions that Ru is the first villager he has encountered. Kuro disputes this, prompting Hiraku to amend his statement, saying she is more like the 30th villager. Ru inquires if Hiraku can cultivate some medicinal herbs, and Hiraku agrees to give it a shot. Ru mentions they need to find the appropriate seeds somehow, but Hiraku insists that he does not require seeds. Using magic, Ru assists by placing lights in the toilet and other areas. Hiraku had nearly lost hope in locating salt, but Ru clarifies that one of the soil layers contains mostly salt and is astonished he didn't notice while performing all that digging. Hiraku inspects his fruit garden, but presumes it requires more time for them to mature than the vegetables. Zabuton sounds the alarm, and Hiraku is puzzled about what is happening. He accompanies Ru to investigate, only to discover another girl being ensnared by the spiders and dogs. She apologizes for attacking them and requests Hiraku's assistance. As he frees her, she utilizes magic to heal herself. She then spots Ru and realizes she was concealing herself in the forest and desires to capture her, but the dogs launch an attack on her once more. Hiraku brings the girl and Ru back to his home. Ru clarifies she was in a similar predicament. The dogs are quite merciless, and magic does not really impact them, as they can also evade spells. The girl inquires about who Hiraku is, and, blushing, Ru reveals that he is her husband. The girl then introduces herself as Tia, an angel. Hiraku speculates that she serves God, but Ru explains that angels are a race of warriors who possess more muscle than intelligence. Hiraku questions why Tia is pursuing Ru, and Tia explains that Ru has a bounty due to the destruction she caused in the town. Ru is perpetually researching odd medicines and concoctions, and whenever something irritates her, she starts exploding things. Ru states that this occurrence only happened once because the nobles were excessively demanding and needed to learn a lesson, and it was an accident, finally admitting she went a bit overboard. She also mentions that Tia is somewhat stronger than her, which is the reason she fled into the forest. Tia is astonished that Ru is acknowledging her vulnerabilities, and Ru explains it's because she understands how weak she is after confronting the dogs. Ru invites Tia to live with them, believing she will enjoy it. Tia consents, and Ru takes her on a tour to showcase the crops. They spend the day gathering some vegetables, and Hiraku offers Tia some to taste, which she ultimately enjoys. After several days, Tia inquires with Hiraku about the possibility of growing additional strawberries. Hiraku clarifies that they can, but even with an expansion, they will struggle to keep up with the harvesting of everything. Tia acknowledges that they could indeed benefit from extra assistance. Hiraku further observes that even if they successfully harvest everything, they might not be able to consume it all. Hiraku notices that the dog family has expanded significantly. Soon, they will mature and seek out partners for themselves. Ru realizes this means their numbers will increase even further, prompting Hiraku to recognize that the hut he built for them won't suffice in size. Hiraku consequently resolves to construct a dog area adjacent to the orchard. Hiraku still has not named the new pups, as there are too many, making it difficult for him to come up with names. Hiraku then observes Zabuton's children departing, although some choose to remain. Tia informs Hiraku that she will be away for some time and takes flight. A few days later, Tia comes back accompanied by a group of high elf girls. They arrived at Tia's suggestion and expressed their desire to reside here. Tia mentions they have a sorrowful backstory. They formerly lived in a northern village, but most of their kin were annihilated when they became involved in the humans' war. Their race has been dispersed, and they have been traversing the land in search of a new home ever since. Ru also proposes they take the girls, having heard that high elves are a gifted race. She speculates they are still quite young, to which Leah confirms that she is the oldest at just over 400 years, while Lise is the youngest at just over 300 years old. Tia and Ru advocate strongly, and Hiraku consents, provided that they can coexist peacefully with the other inhabitants. Leah inquires about who the roommates are, and Ru introduces Zabuton and the dogs, leading the girls to faint. As the elves desired to reside together, Hiraku made the decision to construct one large house for them. The elves possess greater knowledge regarding construction, and Hiraku chooses to adhere to their instructions while they build the house, primarily digging and supplying lumber to them. After a span of 10 days, the house is finished. It is quite spacious, and both Ru and Tia express their admiration. Hiraku feels envious and contemplates rebuilding his hut. The elves' house features a large living room where they can all convene and dine. On either side of the living room, there are storage rooms. The second floor consists of individual rooms for them. Hiraku is taken aback to discover that the elves also consume meat and utilize fire. His perception of elves has been that they awaken with the sunrise and retire to sleep when the sun sets. They are in harmony with nature, cherish trees, primarily eat berries, and refrain from wearing any metal. Lie advises Hiraku not to undervalue the forest, as attempting to live that way would lead to swift demise. Lie clarifies that they intend to engage in some mining and blacksmithing activities. Hiraku is astonished, as in his perspective, that was the domain of dwarves. Shortly thereafter, they assemble a furnace and begin manufacturing items. With a metal pan in hand, Hiraku feels a surge of excitement, sensing that his civilization is progressing, and speculates that the elves may be capable of anything. Lie points out that there are certain things they cannot accomplish, such as settling down and reproducing. Hiraku remarks that they have already accomplished one of those things, but chooses to remain silent about the second, given their expressions and smiles directed at him. The elves had noticed a wheat field, and Hiraku explains that they have harvested it and converted it into flour. Lee then inquires whether they can make some bread, revealing that they possess a jar with yeast, and Hiraku readily agrees. While relishing the bread, Hiraku contemplates the need to expand the wheat field. However, at that moment, he realizes something and asks Ru if this land belongs to anyone. Ru clarifies that no one owns the forest, although it is technically under the dominion of the Demon Lord. Upon hearing that, Hiraku begins to feel anxious and wonders if the Demon Lord will oppose it, but Ru reassures him that, since he constructed this himself, the land rightfully belongs to him. Tia, Ru, and Leah are astonished by Hiraku, as he has not only tamed the Inferno Wolves, but also a demon spider. The crops are remarkable as well, and Leah muses whether the soil here is truly that rich for them to thrive so well. However, it is surprising how he is unaware of the world surrounding him. He had an incorrect notion of what elves were and did not know anything about angels, leading the girls to conclude that it is more than just a gap in knowledge. Meanwhile, Hiraku is inside his hut, crafting a wooden cup. He realizes that he hasn't made progress on his waterway for some time and wonders if the girls might assist him. Zabuton demonstrates to Hiraku that it has caught a queen bee. Since it does not intend to consume the bee and the bee poses no threat, Hiraku resolves to construct a small home for the bee to create a nest with the hope that he can collect some honey. Tia, who is passing by, is curious about what Hiraku is doing but feels apprehensive about the hive and apologizes for interrupting him. Following that, Hiraku digs a sizable hole, planning to use it as a reservoir, and explains to Leah that he intends to draw water from the river. Leah queries how much progress he has made on his waterway, but upon learning that he has just begun, she suggests they should first decide what material to use for its construction. Hiraku envisions using stone, but Leah clarifies that it will be difficult to obtain. Hiraku then considers wood, but Leah points out that because of the length, they will have to join many pieces, leading to excess leakage. Hiraku eventually opts to use dirt and, utilizing the almighty tool, he compresses it, transforming it into something solid and sturdy like concrete. Hiraku allows the elves to manage the foundation of the waterway, while he concentrates on sealing the seams and reinforcing the foundation. Hiraku also succeeds in catching some fish. Tia and Ru identify the fish as quite ferocious ones from the Forest of Death and question whether it is safe to consume them. They make Hiraku try them first and will only eat afterward, but ultimately find them delicious. Hiraku captures additional fish and preserves them with salt. Hiraku is astonished that he has been able to grow some rice, but now that he has easy access to water, Hiraku decides to create a rice paddy. After he excavates the area and floods it, the girls speculate whether he means to create a lake and grow fish in it. Hiraku refutes this and asks them to assist him in planting some rice. The rice fields flourish rapidly, and Hiraku teaches the girls how to harvest them. After drying the rice, he utilizes the almighty tool to craft an ancient thresher and then a sieve to remove the leaves and plant debris. He then employs a mortar to separate the husk from the rice and a pestle to polish the rice. The girls observe that it is quite a bit of work and wonder if they can finally eat, but Hiraku explains they must first cook it and shows them how to do so. Ultimately, Hiraku shapes the rice into rice balls. The girls enjoy the rice balls so much that they consume all of them, leaving only a single grain of rice for Hiraku. The girls can clean themselves with magic, but since Hiraku cannot do so, he opts to construct a bath. The girls mention they can wash in the river, but Hiraku clarifies the advantages of having a bath and that they can bathe in winter as well without freezing. The girls assist him, and the progress on the bath is going smoothly. However, Hiraku then realizes and ponders if it is acceptable to discharge the wastewater back into the river. Tia proposes that they utilize slimes since they will consume the waste products and purify the water. Tia brings some slimes, and Hiraku builds a purification pool for them. Tia points out they can also place them into the toilets, but Hiraku is uncertain if he wants to do his business over a slime's head. Hiraku discovers some mushrooms growing on his wood logs, and not knowing which ones are poisonous and which are safe, he wonders if he can cultivate some mushrooms himself and uses the mighty tool to strike the wood, hoping for shiitake, shimeji, and other mushrooms. In the evening, Hiraku teaches the girls how to use the bath. He explains that once they undress, they should clean themselves in the washing area. Leah interrupts him and says it would be simpler if he demonstrates. Hiraku consents and shows them the process. As he enters the bath, he feels overwhelming joy. The girls then do not hesitate and begin following the steps to join him. Hiraku mentions he will leave to let them enjoy it and will use it afterward, but the girls say they can bathe together, as that way they won't have to heat up water again. Surrounded by the girls, Hiraku feels he cannot relax. The following day, Hiraku notices that he has grown some mushrooms. He then hears the dogs and sees that they have discovered 5 new elves and brought them in. As the girls introduce themselves, Hiraku realizes they all start with La, indicating they must be related. Leah explains that she recognizes them and that they used to live in the same village, but they last saw each other 200 years ago. Hiraku agrees that they can live there as well, and Leah expresses her desire to start building them a house. She also mentions that they can seize the opportunity to make some improvements to Hiraku's house. Kuro observes that the number of females in Hiraku's group has risen. Kuro shares that he had lived in solitude in the forest and was never bested in combat by another male. He had planned to live as he wished, but one day he encountered a female who ultimately overpowered him. From that moment, the two began to travel together. The female eventually became pregnant, and Kuro was content with the prospect of having a family. But they encountered a grappler bear, the ruler of this forest. The bear defeated them, but chose not to eat them. Injured, the two were unable to hunt for sustenance. They became so weakened that their usual prey evaded them, and ultimately they arrived at the heart of the forest, a place even the grappler bear steers clear of. There, they discovered a solitary human male. Typically, humans conceal themselves in the forest and refrain from lingering in one location for an extended period. Kuro pondered how such a frail human could survive independently, but then he sensed the boundless power emanating from the extraordinary tool. Kuro believed this marked their end and accepted it. However, Hiraku generously shared his food and tended to their needs. Kuro and his wife then resolved that Hiraku would be their master. Kuro's sole worry is that Hiraku does not seem to grasp that Kuro is a fearsome creature known as the Inferno Wolf. Kuro is confident everything will be all right and is grateful for having met Hiraku. Hiraku's new home is finally completed. The girls then take him on a tour of the house and his bedroom. Hiraku notices a room with a bolt lock and is curious about its contents, but upon opening it and spotting a bed for two, he quickly closes the door and pretends he didn't see it. The following day, Hiraku chooses to prepare a dish he hasn't tried making before: curry. Hiraku brings the girl to an area of his crops where they observe many unfamiliar plants, and he explains that some of them are varieties that won't thrive in regions with snowfall, but due to the miraculous tool, he can cultivate them here. He goes on to gather spices for the curry, starting with some cumin. Next, he collects some turmeric and explains that this ingredient provides the curry its color. Afterward, he gathers coriander and mentions they need to grind the seeds into powder. He also picks some cilantro leaves, whose scent repels the dogs. The girls notice and suggest it might be useful to research the plant. Hiraku then continues to collect black pepper and cayenne peppers. Having collected all the spices, Hiraku moves on to the next step, but sees that only Leah is present, who tells him that Ru and Tia are preoccupied with some research on creating a powerful protection talisman. Hiraku then begins cooking, heating the rapeseed oil they extracted and adding the rabbit meat. While that cooks, he grinds all the spices into powder, excluding the cumin. When the meat develops some color, he removes it to prevent overcooking and cooks the cumin with the leftover bits and juices from the meat. Following that, he adds diced onions, ginger, and garlic. Next, he incorporates tomatoes and continues sautéing everything. When it turns into a paste, he adds the spices and some salt. After cooking it for a short while, he then introduces the meat and boiled soybeans along with some water. As he allows it to cook, Hiraku feels he has forgotten something and then remembers it's naan. Hiraku clarifies that the recipe is the same as making regular bread until the point they allow it to rise, where they will roll the dough with a rolling pin. The girls return just as Hiraku finishes cooking, and they all sit down to eat. He explains how to enjoy the naan with the curry, and the girls end up savoring it and decide to have a second serving. Observing them, Hiraku hopes they will leave some for him as well. Ru and Tia offer some curry to the dogs, but upon catching a whiff, the dogs flee. With winter approaching, Hiraku gets ready and collects firewood. He understands that Zabuton will hibernate and asks him ahead of time to prepare some additional blankets. Hiraku has Ru and Tia cure some meat by smoking and drying it, particularly since the dogs won't be able to hunt much during winter. Hiraku is devising a method to preserve vegetables and constructs a two-tiered box. He intends to place the vegetables on the upper tier and cover them with a blanket and snow, while any snow that collects will gather on the lower tier to keep the vegetables dry. Observing the girls using magic, Hiraku wished he could also use it, but he's glad they are around since they've helped him considerably, as he can only manage gardening and cooking. Ru states that he is the remarkable one because no one has ever lived that long in this forest. When winter arrives, they spend more time indoors, and Hiraku decides to create some board games like reversi, chess, and a mahjong set. He explains the reversi game, noting that it concludes when the board is full, with the winner being the one who has more pieces of his color. Ru finds the game rules straightforward and questions if it will be enjoyable, but Tia asserts that it allows for intricate strategies. Hiraku praises Tia for her insight, which irritates Ru, leading her to challenge Tia. As they play, Tia is definitely winning, but Ru overturns the board, pretending it was an accident. Ru suggests they restart since they don't recall where the pieces were, but Tia uses magic and restores the board to its original state. Ru flips it again, but Tia magically restores it once more. Hiraku checks on the other girls and notices Kuro advising where to move a piece. He then sees other dogs playing chess and is astonished that they not only grasp the rules, but also play the game. A sense of ominous energy emanates from them, and he concludes that he should never challenge the dogs to a match. Ru then approaches and decides to play with the dogs, confident that she cannot lose, but ultimately loses and refrains from flipping the table due to her fear of Kuro. Hiraku then engages in a mahjong game with Kuro, Tia, and Leah. convinced that Kuro shouldn't have learned the rules so quickly. Nevertheless, he loses significantly, finishing in last place, while Kuro emerges victorious. Feeling disheartened, Hiraku opts to create a mini bowling game. When Rue questions why they need to knock down the pins, he chooses to name them after some villains. As they engage in games each day, winter passes swiftly, and spring arrives. One morning, Zabuton notifies them. Hiraku then observes that something large is approaching from the sky. He conjectures it is a dragon, but Tia informs him it is a wyvern.
The wyvern assaults Hiraku's group, unleashing fire, but Rue and Tia employ magic for their defense. The fire spreads into the fields, yet the elves swiftly extinguish it. Hiraku contemplates his options and how to stop the wyvern. He calls forth the extraordinary tool which, to his astonishment, transforms into a spear. He launches it at the wyvern, which forms a 3-layer barrier, but the spear penetrates it and damages its wing. He then throws it again, driving it through its chest and killing it. Hiraku ponders whether it is common to encounter wyverns, but Rue clarifies that they are uncommon creatures. Hiraku then speculates if someone might have sent it, but Tia explains that even if that were true, the individual wouldn't have sent it alone, since it is a valuable creature. Hiraku then concludes it was merely a fortunate encounter. He then questions whether they can consume it, and the girls inform him it is considered to be delicacy meat. Hiraku prepares 3 dishes using the wyvern meat, and all the girls ultimately enjoy it. Rue inquires if Tia could have obstructed Hiraku's spear, but Tia observes that, since the wyvern was unable to stop it, she wouldn't have been capable of stopping it either. Rue surmises it was luck that they initially encountered the dogs instead of Hiraku. In the demonic kingdom of Galgardo, at the Demon Lord's castle, the great generals receive news that a wyvern has been defeated. Randon cannot believe it, as when one approaches their territory, they must mobilize their entire military force. Beazle reports that the wyvern was attacked from the ground and killed in 2 strikes. Randon worries they will be unable to combat someone that formidable. Beazle asserts that they are the 4 generals and must address the situation before fear spreads. Randon then resolves they should resign, but Beazle tries to dissuade him. In Gatekeeper Dragons, Drime's lair, Doraim, a blue dragon, asks Gucci if he witnessed the battle, and Gucci affirms this. Doraim wonders about the outcome if he received the spear attack, and Gucci surmises it will probably go cleanly through him. Doraim contemplates what to do, and Gucci points out that it would be unwise to attack. Hiraku savored the wyvern meat, but sensed that something was lacking and chose to finally make some alcohol. He speculated that wine might be present in this world and opted to create it from grapes. The girls were thrilled and they quickly gathered the grapes. Hiraku then established a location where he placed the grapes and instructed the girls to stomp on them. The girls felt a bit awkward initially, but figured it might be easier if they had some sort of rhythm. The elves then proposed a song from their village and began to sing. They filled several barrels, and Hiraku decided to allow the yeast on the grape's skin to ferment it for their benefit. Hiraku contemplated whether they had made too much, but upon hearing that the girls would consume it swiftly, he questioned if he had made too little. Meanwhile, the god watched Hiraku and pondered if this was sufficient for him to forgive him, but the goddess of agriculture informed him it wasn't, as he punished an innocent soul, and while attempting to rescue it, ended up sending him to the forest of death. The goddess was incredulous that he had also given him a replica of the Holy Lance Grime. The god clarified that he was merely using it as a farming implement and that he had received permission. However, the goddess pointed out that he hadn't informed her he was giving it to a human, which should drain their life force and kill them instantly. The god asserted he would be fine, as he provided him with an extremely healthy body and he must have a rapid recovery. The goddess remarked that he was simply being reckless. She was additionally furious that the god statues Hiraku created depicted her as an old man. The god tried to argue it wasn't his fault, but she refused to listen and sentenced him to sit for 300 years. Zabuton signaled to Hiraku, and he noticed that the dogs and spiders had captured another girl. Rue identified her as her younger sister Flora. As they escorted her to the village, Flora explained that she heard the angel was pursuing her, and she followed her into the forest. Hiraku suggested that she stay there for a while so that she could recuperate. Flora agreed, but found it odd that Hiraku was Rue's husband. Rue clarified that he is the master of the Inferno Wolves and also managed to take down a wyvern. Upon hearing this, Flora quickly apologized. Hiraku realized that Kuro wasn't a dog but a wolf and pondered about the Inferno aspect. Kuro then breathed fire, and Hiraku was astonished. Rue and Tia were surprised he hadn't known this, as they were well-known beasts and had lived quite a long time with him. Hiraku prepares some meals for Flora, who ultimately enjoys them. He expresses his desire to create some miso and soy sauce, and since Flora is unfamiliar with them, he clarifies that they are produced from fermented soybeans. As Flora questions the meaning of fermented, he describes the processes of making cheese and wine. After hearing about the microorganisms involved, Flora is thrilled about a new topic she can research. After a few days, Flora departs, but a month later she returns to stay there and has also brought her maids along. Anne speaks on behalf of all the maids and informs Hiraku that he can utilize them as he wishes. Hiraku notices that Flora has also brought 2 cows and becomes enthusiastic about the possibility of making butter and cheese now. Tia realizes that the vampires, elves, wolves, and spiders have all become large groups, whereas she is on her own. She tells Hiraku that she will take a short leave and then flies away. Tia soon returns, accompanied by her underlings. 3 angels named Gran Maria, Kudel, and Corone, as well as some lizard men represented by Daga and a chicken. With the arrival of the maids, who belong to a race of ogres, all of the chores begin to be completed much more quickly. Hiraku observes that they don't prepare any complicated recipes and decides to share all the cooking techniques he knows with them. This piques the interest of the ogres, who then start to cook. Tia instructs the 3 angels she brought to patrol the forest. Hiraku wonders why they showed up in armor, but soon realizes that Tia intended for them to serve as security following the wyvern's appearance. The lizard men are responsible for all the outdoor labor that requires strength, and thanks to their efforts, the construction work is proceeding faster than it had before. Hiraku makes Daga wear a scarf on his arm, as he is unable to distinguish them. Hiraku notices that their numbers have grown significantly. Leia then arrives and informs him that she has brought all the elves she discovered in the forest. Hiraku notices yet another large group of elves, but realizes that they are all female. He ponders the absence of the male elves, and Leia explains that the males didn't survive. Nevertheless, they plan to have many in the future. Hiraku feels happy for them, but decides not to inquire about their plans for that. A few days later, Hiraku calls all the representatives together to discuss the naming of the village. Rue proposes that they name it after Hiraku, but Hiraku is not fond of that idea. Anne suggests they name it after the forest, but upon learning that the forest is called the Forest of Death, Hiraku thinks that's a frightening name. Zabuton then points towards the door, and when Hiraku opens it, he sees the great tree and decides to name it the Great Tree Village. That evening, he announces the name of the village to everyone, and explains that they will hold a party to celebrate. Everyone begins calling Hiraku their mayor. Hiraku states that they need to make that decision together later on, but the girls tell him that everyone is already calling him that. The village then celebrates by enjoying the first batch of wine they made. Hiraku becomes the mayor of the Great Tree Village. However, his daily responsibilities remain unchanged. One day, a messenger from the demonic kingdom appears. Beezle asks to meet with the person in charge of the village, and Hiraku steps forward. Beezle presents a gift to Hiraku and clarifies that the Demon Lord wishes to discuss the situation of the settlement. Hiraku remembers that the land was previously under the protection of the Demon Lord and speculates whether they will require him to pay taxes or decide to expel him. Hiraku informs Beezle that if the Demon Lord permits them to remain, they will offer part of their harvest as tax and proposes 10%. Hiraku ponders if that amount is too low, but Beezle is willing to accept. Hiraku then clarifies that they can collect the tax each year before winter begins. As Beezle consents, both parties sign a contract. Hiraku's village will pay 10% of what they cultivate in their fields. However, this does not include milk, eggs, honey, or alcohol that they produce. If they show interest in the goods they create, they can engage in trade. Hiraku felt he was a bit too assertive during the negotiations, and also presented them with a gift. After Beezle departs, the girls tell Hiraku that he performed well, but typically the tax is around 50% to 60%. Additionally, having them come to collect it is a wise strategy as it compels them to officially acknowledge their residency. It is also very advantageous that they have the Demon Lord's protection. Rue is thrilled about the gift Beezle provided them, an extraordinary medicine that can be consumed or applied directly to a wound. Beezle reports back to the other 4 generals, who are taken aback that the village is yielding to them despite their capability to conquer a wyvern. Randon speculates whether they have a hidden agenda, and Beezle shares the same concern, explaining that he had no option but to accept their terms since the vampire princess and the Angel of Annihilation were present. They were also accompanied by an army of high elves and a pack of inferno wolves, along with a trio of deadly angels. Beezle had to agree to their terms, otherwise they would have become enemies of the demonic kingdom. Gratz notices that they received a gift from the village and decides to open it in case it poses a threat. He sees that it consists of fruits resembling apples, but with a more appealing shape and color. Beezle observes that the fabric containing the apples is made by a great demon spider. Gratz is astonished to learn this because a great demon spider once fought one of the previous demon lords to a standstill. Doraime, the genuine ruler of the dragons, also pays a visit to the village. Gucci presents them with a gift and clarifies that Doraime's lair is situated to the south of their location. Although the distance is considerable, they are somewhat like neighbors and came to pay their respects. Hiraku is taken aback by how Doraime continually bows, and he mentions that he would invite them inside, but Doraime is overly large. Gucci then requests Doraime to assume a smaller form, and Doraime transforms into a human. After partaking in food and drink, Doraime ends up enjoying the alcohol and expresses a desire to remain and reside there, but Gucci informs him that he must protect his own territory, and that he would become a disturbance to the villagers if he stayed too long. Following the two visits, Hiraku begins to contemplate a better way to welcome visitors, and resolves to construct a guest house. He suggests a house suitable for 4 individuals, but the girls propose that it should be larger since visitors typically arrive in large groups, necessitating a space for 30 people. They commence work on the guest house. Hiraku then starts to ponder a more appropriate way to greet guests. Currently, the angels capture and bring any visitors to the entrance of the village. Moreover, when Zabuton raises the alarm, everyone grabs their weapons and prepares for combat. Hiraku devises a new signal for visitors and provides a bell for Zabuton to ring. Hiraku wishes for himself, Ru, and Tia to greet the guests, but this idea is dismissed, and he is compelled to include some elves, oni maids, and lizardmen. Before long, Garf and a few beastmen from the Howling Village arrive as guests and express their intent to establish a connection with Hiraku's village. Ru decides to take charge and inquires if that is everyone. Upon Garf's confirmation, Ru explains that they will perceive anyone else as an enemy. The Inferno Wolves then usher in additional members from Garf's group, for which he apologizes. She advises them to behave and afterward invites them into the village. Once they are settled into the guest house, they are locked inside. Tia points out that every guest they have hosted has brought a gift. Although she is still uncertain of their intentions, they are not adhering to the customary visitor protocols, so they will not receive the standard visitor treatment. The girls oppose providing luxurious food or alcohol to the visitors, but Hiraku successfully persuades them to offer some alcohol. While the beastmen consume food and drink, Hiraku inquires about how they discovered his village. Garf clarifies that they received information from the Demon Lord's subordinates. In the Howling Village, they sustain themselves through hunting or mining, and they have been engaging in trade with other human villages. However, due to recent issues in the human villages, the trade with them became unstable, prompting them to seek new trading partners. Tia questions why some of them chose to stay hidden, and one of them explains that if anything were to happen to the others, they would return and inform their village. The following day, Garf articulates that they wish to trade and establish an open market. However, as it is challenging for them to bring goods to this village, he would prefer if Hiraku could come to their village, as he believes Hiraku can navigate the forest with ease. Hiraku then suggests that he could use the wolves to haul a cart filled with goods and visit their village. For their inaugural trade, Garf presents items crafted from the ores they mined, such as silverware, glassworks, and metalworks, and requests food in exchange. Upon seeing the items, Hiraku consents and provides the food they have available for trade. As they prepare to depart, Garf discloses that he was unaware that people bring gifts when visiting since their village lacks such a custom, but he promises to bring a gift next time, although he notes that they are poor and it won't be anything extravagant. Hiraku reassures him that the worth is unimportant, but the intention behind it is what matters. Some time elapses, and Hiraku concludes that it is time to engage in trade with the Howling Village. However, the girls do not permit him to leave and agree that Tia will accompany some lizardmen. Typically, the journey to the village would require 10 days, but Doraime consents to expedite their travel in exchange for a barrel of wine. Following his initial visit, Doraime began to frequently visit the village, consistently bringing treasures or weapons as gifts, so no one voices complaints about him. A few days later, Tia returns with a sorrowful Doraime. She clarifies that when the beastmen noticed them with the dragon, they were taken aback and initially declined to accept any of the items offered to them. However, they provided some free samples as Hiraku recommended, and the beastmen adored the products, ultimately trading everything. Doraime then gripes that they even exchanged the barrel of wine that was meant for him. Hiraku then assures him that he can enjoy more tonight at dinner, and Doraime feels cheerful once more. Tia discloses that the mayor of Howling Village inquired if some individuals from his village could relocate here. Hiraku notes that they require more laborers, so he would be pleased to welcome them. Tia then shares that there are 20 individuals interested in coming, and they are all young women. Hiraku expresses slight disappointment as the village is primarily composed of females and worries that the village might lack a future. He consents but requests that they send 2 young men as well. The contingent of female beastmen arrives, and Sina introduces herself. She expresses her gratitude for their acceptance and explains that they are ready to be utilized in whatever manner he deems appropriate, yet requests that he does not forsake them. Hiraku encourages them to take their time and acclimate to the area, after which they can express their preferences for the type of housing they desire. He also reassures them not to be concerned about being expelled. Hiraku ponders about the young men he requested, and Sena reveals that they brought 3 young men, as he had asked. Hiraku then notices that they are 3 young boys. Hiraku is taken aback but then realizes that in 5 or 10 years they may contribute to the village's future. The beastmen's initial fear that they will be treated terribly turns out to be unfounded, and they quickly adjust to village life. Sena's use of magic is observed by Hiraku, who speculates that everyone but him may utilize it. Hiraku is aware that the beastmen youngsters will eventually overtake him, but she tries to reassure him and explain that they are still unable to use it, and that they may learn together. Although Hiraku picks a few apples, the earth shakes, and he hears some commotion close to the hamlet. Gran Maria swiftly informs us that a bloody viper and a grappling bear are engaged in combat in the forest's northern region. Gran Maria is asked by Hiraku to accompany him in seeing the monsters and to find out whether the bear flesh is edible. Hiraku asks Gran Maria to let him off when they arrive, but she advises them to return and strategize. When she departs, he strikes the beast and kills it with 1 blow. The killer angels then stare at the vanquished monsters and remark on how amazing Hiraku is, because they were unable to defeat such a beast with a single strike. Hiraku then chooses to prepare the bear with wine and creates a wine-braised grappler bear meal, but discovers that it has a really gamey flavor. He admits that using their valuable wine to prepare food is acceptable, which surprises the girls. Because the viper tastes like fried chicken, he fries it and actually enjoys it more. Hiraku wants to test something because the viper tastes like chicken. He approaches Flora and inquires about an antibacterial substance. He claims that he needs something that can eradicate microbes and protect against stomach pain or sickness. Flora then gives him a potion, telling him that it will cause an explosion. She gives him a different concoction when Hiraku asks for something less potent. Flora tells Hiraku that she has made no progress with the miso manufacture, which also makes him curious. Even though she followed his instructions, she had already used a potion 3 times that caused her house to explode, and she had seen no fermentation. Hiraku advised them to give it another go. The day after that, Hiraku collects some chicken eggs. After that, he puts in vinegar and salt. Mayonnaise, which will complement the fried viper, is made by mixing it and then adding a bit of oil. Next, Hiraku begins with the miso by first cooking the soybeans that he and Flora had soaked in water. After that, he grinds them up and utilizes the all-powerful instrument to introduce koji mold. They make balls out of it, fill barrels with it, and leave for a couple months. After that, Ru phones Hiraku to let him know they have company. A small group of elderly dwarves, headed by Donovan, came to see them because they had heard that their alcohol was of excellent quality and they wanted them to share some with them. The women say that it is not available for free. According to Donovan, they have technology but no money. Because they have spent their entire lives learning about alcohol manufacture, they are able to assist them in converting their excellent crops into high-quality alcohol. Upon hearing that, the girls immediately concur. The dwarves then produce corn whiskey using distillation. In the end, Donovan and his men stayed in the village and became the village's brewers. The village later throws a warm party for the dwarves and beastmen. Realizing that at last some men joined, Hiraku inquires to Donovan if any lady there has captured his attention. Donovan then says that the girls are too young for him and that he isn't interested in them if they can't grow a beard. Hiraku spots a dragon coming towards him one day. He gets ready for a battle since it doesn't seem calm. Then Doraime arrives and puts an end to the dragon. A third, even more terrifying dragon emerges as the 2 dragons are locked in a battle of wills. The dragon, however, manages to escape Hiraku's spear at the last second. Gucci then intervenes, telling Hiraku that they are not adversaries and are not engaged in combat. When the dragons touch down and change into human shapes, Gucci tells us that the other 2 are Doraime's wife, Grafaloon, and daughter, Lastus Moon. Since Doraime regularly sneaks out to visit the town, his wife and daughter suspected that he might be having an affair, especially since he always steals something from the treasury and comes back in the morning. Hiraku had constructed a home for Doraime there so that he wouldn't have to walk home intoxicated, but he now believes it was a mistake. The women suspect that Doraime is concealing something, even if he attempts to convince them that everything is at the top level of politics. The women agree with Doraime's statement that he lacks the guts to have an affair. Doraemon makes his family apologize for what happened earlier. Grafaloon then apologizes for the notion of killing the man who threatened his daughter with a spear, and Lastus Moon then begs for forgiveness for nearly setting the hamlet ablaze. Things are sorted out, and Hiraku exits happily. After that, Doraemon inquires as to whether his wife and daughter comprehend his actions, to which Grafaloon responds by saying that despite their small number, they have the ability to confront them, which is something she never anticipated seeing. Grafaloon was unable to repel the assault and had to dodge it, according to Lastus Moon. That was mostly because of the spider who saved her, Grafaloon says, adding that the two are old pals. She wouldn't have survived if he hadn't rescued her. After that, Lastus Moon is instructed by Grafaloon to reside in this community and see to it that this authority is never used against them. Lastus Moon lives there, and Hiraku agrees with him. She soon begins assisting them with their labor, but as she is a dragon and is too powerful, she would frequently destroy anything he touches. Since Doraemon asked him to give her some employment, Hiraku is unsure of what to do with her. After that, he sees that the wolves are frightened, and Tia adds that the chickens and cows are too. The dragons, she says, are not just powerful, they also possess knowledge and wisdom. After that, Hiraku has an epiphany and dispatches Lastus Moon to manage the diplomatic connections with Beezle, who is taken aback by the sight of a dragon. Beezle hardly tells her that he wants more fruits like the ones they got last time, and she wonders what he wants. According to Lastus Moon, they have strawberries but few oranges. Beezle is terrified and chooses to grab 10 boxes. She also recommends a few apples, pears, persimmons, and watermelons, which Beezle also accepts. According to Beezle, they now have a dragon. Despite the danger, they opt to deploy a spy. Florem, Beezle's daughter, receives a phone call from him, where he tells her that he wants her to look into the village's military strength. Lastus Moon greets Florem in the village and shows her around. But as Lastus Moon is giving her a tour, he learns that they saw a messenger from Howling Village, and she makes the decision to explore Florem on her own. Florem then travels around to observe all of the races. She would normally expect Lastus Moon to be in charge of them all, but she learned that someone else is in charge of everyone above her. Eventually, she sees Hiraku, but she disregards him since he is merely a person. She tells Lastus Moon that Hiraku is the mayor when they meet again. Lastus Moon argues that he is powerful enough to defeat her mother, even if Florem finds it hard to believe that a person is in charge of them all. Florem, Beezle's daughter, will be staying for some time, Hiraku learned. He notices that she gets along well with Lastus Moon, but Florem begins to behave very formally and awkwardly as soon as he arrives. The slimes in Taiju Village had begun to reproduce, and they currently come in a variety of hues. It wasn't really noticed until a purple slime consumed a barrel of booze, which made the girls furious. Despite the trial and guilty verdict, Frau Rem maintains that it is a slime and will not think about its behavior regardless of the punishment imposed. Since it's only one slime, the ladies understand it and choose to ignore it. Eventually, during meals and drinks, the red slime began to join them with everyone else. The autumn arrives. Hiraku and the others are eating hot pot, and Hiraku adds that it would taste even better if they had some fish. The girls then ask him what he means by seafood, and Hiraku lists items like cod, crabs, monkfish, and kombu seaweed. Flora is advised by Rue to begin studying those topics. Tia is shocked by the fact that crabs are so tough to eat. From this village, Frau Rem tells them that they can travel south to get to a harbor town known as Shashato, which is located inside the demonic kingdom. Frau Rem makes the decision to accompany Lastus Moon on her flight to it because she is familiar with a shopkeeper there. 3 days later, Frau Rem and Lastus Moon come back with Michael Garaun, a merchant from the town of Shashato. He tells Hiraku about the fish he brought, informs him that their fishermen typically discard the kombu he asked for, but that he instructed his men to gather some. Michael outlines 3 objectives for his trip: to give Hiraku a warm welcome and express gratitude for asking to conduct business with them, to propose additional avenues for them to trade commodities and conduct business, and third, to become the village's official government supplier. According to the girls, he intends to be the sole intermediary for all trade between the hamlet and the outside world. They continue the discussion about the proposition after he presents them with a list of the items that his firm deals in. Michael wants them to talk about the alcohol next time before they leave in the evening, but Lastus Moon shouts at him that he is not allowed to have it. Michael, frightened, then retreats from the conversation and exits. He returns to Shashato via Lastus Moon. Even the thought of the community makes Michael afraid as he turns to glance back at it. One of Michael's men informs him 3 days prior that a visitor wants to chat with him. Michael is surprised as to why they don't take care of it, because he is very busy. But the guy replies that they specifically asked for him by name and brought things from their farm, and he doesn't know what to do. Michael suggests they refer them to somewhere else, since it's not their policy to bring items. But at that point, his intuition tells him not to disregard this, and he chooses to meet them. Michael is astonished to meet Frau Rem from the Chrome family during their encounter, and he is relieved that he didn't turn her away since he would have perhaps lost his cool. Hearing that she is Lastismun, he is taken aback that she is such a crazy dragon and wonders who the other woman is. The girls then present him with the products and explain that they want him to purchase them, but in return they only ask that he locate a few items for them. He notices apples while inspecting the items and understands that the fruit has made its way into the demonic kingdom and is now the topic of conversation. He may sell each of them for a few silver coins. The other fruits are then visible to him, and he is shocked by the quantity they have brought him. He says he will find them what they want, even though he thought it was really dangerous, since he understands he will be earning a lot of money, which makes him very happy because it outweighs the risk. He orders his guy to get him the best items on the market and expresses a desire to accompany the girls on their return. The girls then state that they are traveling to the Forest of Death's Taiju settlement. Michael begins to feel uneasy upon hearing this. Everyone in Taiju village frightens him, with the exception of Hiraku. He believes he will be wealthy after the transaction, but he is unsure if his physical condition will be able to handle it. Later, Hiraku prepares seafood hot pot, which everyone enjoys. An additional dragon is spotted in the community. Hiraku wonders if it has anything to do with Doraime, but the dragon makes fun of Hiraku and assaults him. Then, Hiraku turns serious and throws his spear at the dragon, making it seem as if he missed. However, he then throws another and brings the dragon down. The dragon transforms into a young woman and declares her surrender. Then Doraime shows up and tells everyone that he is Hakuren, his older sister. Hakuren says it's his fault since he offered Lastismun as a bride and wants to marry her to the mayor at some point. Doraime claims he might have made the statement while intoxicated, but he tries to dispute it. Hakuren visited the mayor to see what kind of person he is, and she also heard that he is rather powerful, so she came to see for herself. Doraime asserts that she is primarily motivated by rage, not by anything else. Then Lastismun is verified as being 900 years younger than Hakuren, but she will still get married before her. It doesn't bother Hiraku that she comes and puts him through his paces, but because she made a mess, he makes her clean it. Hakuren wants them to play mahjong after dinner, but he wants them to wager on anything. Doraime ponders what Hiraku may wager, but Hiraku counters that he has nothing to wager and can only consider a punishment, such strip mahjong. Hakuren, Doraime, and Lastismun are all fiercely competitive and dislike losing, so they agree to play as they are. They begin playing, but Hiraku soon finds himself in his last piece of apparel. He then believes he has a chance, but eventually loses and is compelled to remove his trousers. In addition to Hiraku's village, Bizel reports that Hakuren has also been spotted in Hiraku's hamlet. Glatz is now even more concerned that they have enough force to seize control of the kingdom. Gargard, the demon lord, shares that his daughter has been in a foul mood lately and hasn't said anything to him all day. Glatz then ignores the demon lord and says that they need to raise money and get their army ready, but they notice that Randan has fled once again. Hakuren is very good at any task she undertakes, but she also whines about it. She chooses to remain in the town. She ultimately taught the children math, reading, and writing, and became their instructor. One day, a group of Lamia women, led by Junea, arrive, offering gifts and pleading with Hiraku to spare their lives. The Lamia girls explain to Hiraku that the younger wolves and spiders decided to clear a dungeon they discovered in the forest, which compelled the Lamia to leave their houses. After deciding to exchange the gems they mined for some of their crops, Hiraku and the Lamia return to their native lands. If they continue to trade and the Lamia concur, Hiraku would be content. But when they arrive, Hiraku requests that they wear anything they may have while they are bare. The Lamia subsequently founded the Lamia Delivery Service and began transporting the exchange commodities for the community. The princess of the demonic kingdom, Yuri, is persuaded by three girls, Rosalind Greach, Roj Mammon Rose, and Klakase Bugal, that Hiraku's village is plotting something wicked and wants to use Frarem as a hostage. Yuri makes the decision to defend Frarem by taking the settlement. Bizel goes to Frau Rem to tell her that Princess Yuri plans to launch a military campaign. She was persuaded to do so by Klakase, Roj, and Rosalind. Their intended target is Hiraku's hamlet. Considering that Frau Rem sends the girls trio reports on their strength, she thinks they are rather dumb and questions why they would assault the hamlet. The reports were so absurd, according to Bizel, that they began to believe they were implausible. Frau Rem will be seen as a traitor if she attempts to stop them, according to Bizel, but he begs her to come up with a way to stop them. Since the assault is tomorrow, Frau Rem believes they only need to demonstrate the strength of the community without actually mobilizing it. They offer Junea's Lamia girls 10 apple boxes, and 3 Lamia face the 300 males who are approaching the hamlet, quickly causing them to submit. Consequently, Rosalind, Clacasset and Roage are brought to the settlement, and Frau Rem tells them that they want to join the community and labor for it as if their lives depended on it. They will be employed by Frau Rem, but Hiraku has the authority to get rid of them if they do anything that puts the community at risk. Then Hiraku asks about the fourth girl who is sitting on a throne, and Frau Rem says that she is only here to watch for a bit. Frau Rem informs the girls that their sin will be forgotten if they perform some real labor as Hiraku departs. Furthermore, they should conceal their identities and treat Princess Yuri the same way they would treat any other individual. Frau Rem takes them on a tour of the community. The three girls, however, are nobles and believe that they shouldn't be departing in the middle of nowhere, so they choose to flee. But they alter their minds after seeing inferno wolves and spiders when trying. The trio then begins to assist Frau Rem in his work out of fear of being thrown away, earning them the moniker the Town Hall Girls. Yuri feels bad that she had planned to wage war against the town, given how lovely and quiet it is. Yuri tells Frau Rem that she was concerned for her safety because she had heard she was being held captive by the Demon Lord, and Frau Rem asks why he didn't attempt to stop her. Since the two are childhood friends, they agree that Frau Rem will tell her everything and treat Yuri like a regular person. Yuri later helps out with the farm duties and even makes the three girls join her. Yuri and the girls must now depart. However, the group chooses to stay, citing that they have not yet repaid everyone's generosity, that there is still work to be done, and that they have more to learn about the town. The Demon Lord Gargard tells Bezel that Yuri seems more dignified and constantly occupied with something after she gets back home. Yuri appears to be developing an interest in politics and diplomacy, and his girls are growing into adulthood before his parents are aware of it, according to Bezel. Gargard believes that if she hears the word adult, it means that she must have met a man and wants to rip him to shreds. Gargard is immediately reassured when Bezel cautions him that this behavior will one day cause her to despise him. Although Hiraku's hamlet begins its pre-winter crop harvest, they discover that they have more food than expected and nowhere to put it. Lastisman proposes that they send some to her father, which Hiraku concurs with. At this point, Hakurin recommends that her parents be sent as well. Her mother lives in the south, while her father lives in the north, she tells us. After that, Tia understands that she is referring to the Emperor Dragon Dusu and the Hurricane Dragon Raimiran. Next, Lastisman delivers crops to her father's house before traveling to Shishido City to do the same. The monster that was assaulting the commercial ships was asked to be killed by Michael Garoun, and Lastisman was happy to oblige and triumph over the beast. In the meanwhile, Hakurin traveled north and met some individuals who expressed interest in relocating to the settlement on her way back. Ya is their head. Ya tells Hiraku that they are mountain elves, even if he thinks they are dark elves. Ya tells us that they used to reside in the highlands, but recently they have been having trouble finding food. Hiraku is unsure of what to do next, learning that Ya is aware of the fact that she caused problems and that they are unable to assist strangers and will depart. But Hiraku clarifies that he didn't mean that and had been thinking about where to put them to bed until they constructed a home for them. Ya is overjoyed to see them in the village, telling them that they are great hunters who will provide for themselves. The monsters are too powerful for them, even though they try to capture something. Hiraku advises her to not be concerned about it. Ya then notices he is doing something, and Hiraku tells him that he is attempting to create some pottery, but he is unsuccessful and says that he really needs clay. Ya then offers to locate it for him, pointing out that she is familiar with the planet, its contents, and the creatures, and that she will have no trouble fleeing them. Hiraku is delighted when Ya is able to locate clay and produce some pottery. Hiraku is informed later that they have discovered another dungeon, and at the girls' request, they dispatch a survey crew to check it out. In the meantime, Hiraku eventually completes the male bath and makes use of it. Frau Rem catches the three girls outside and compels them to speak the truth. They say they wanted to use the opportunity to get closer to Hiraku by mashing his back for him. The three of them are the lowest-ranking members, according to Frau Rem, and they cannot just rise through the ranks. The survey team soon returns and recommends sending an extermination team there after confirming the presence of a blood viper within. The elves maintain that they must possess that flesh since it is essential to the survival of their tribe. The blood viper meat is very valuable, according to Ya. It is said to bless you with children, and consuming it floods your body with energy, while also enhancing the connection between husband and wife. After understanding the reasoning behind their desire, Hiraku makes an effort to reassure the girls and encourages them to have a conversation about it with the entire village. The winter arrives. Because she isn't feeling well, Hiraku pays Ru a visit. When describing her symptoms, Sina asks herself whether she's been yearning for acidic meals lately. Ru says that even if she doesn't have an appetite, she can still consume tomatoes and fruits. Someone in Sina's community then uttered the same thing. she said. Sena then tells Hiraku that they congratulated the individual on the birth of their child, prompting him to wonder what happened to them. Due to her pregnancy, Ru is unable to change, but she is doing well. Hiraku begins to wake up a little later because the maids are determined to get up before him in order to get some rest as well. They are dividing breakfast into 3 groups since the community has grown significantly. As Hiraku eats, Gran Maria, who is in the first group, tells him that 3 killer rabbits attempted to enter the farm but were taken care of by Kuro and the other wolves. They observe that it's beneficial for the rabbits to continue making that effort because they have a consistent food source. According to Hiraku, the angels are always composed and appropriate, but when they are not working, they switch to idle mode and let others cook their meals and do their laundry. Hiraku begins working as soon as he finishes eating. He uses the all-powerful instrument to get rid of any garden pests he sees. People in that area needed some time to adjust to the fact that Hiraku would take a lunch break, which is not the norm there. The elves were initially hesitant about eating in the morning because they weren't sure if they had enough food, and they often weren't even eating breakfast. The beastmen also thought they were being treated well at first, since they would be expelled shortly. But they were not accustomed to eating every day. Hiraku keeps working after lunch. Hiraku typically finds that having more hands makes his job easier, but when it comes to tilling new fields or planting new crops, he still does it alone with the help of the almighty tool. In an effort to add some colors to the town, Hiraku plants some flowers. In addition to working on the farm, Hiraku is grateful to God for the powerful instrument that he is using to produce a variety of items to assist the community. In addition, Hiraku occasionally participates in the military training. The maids insist on it, even though he doesn't believe the village needs it. He chooses to train a little after seeing them utilize the training as exercise to maintain their fitness. But he is not very skilled with any weapon, with the exception of the all-powerful tool. When it starts to get dark, Hiraku's workday is over and he goes indoors for dinner. The maids introduce him to a novel meal, telling him that they are about 20% sure that it has a nice flavor. Hiraku advises them to only provide foods that they are at least 50% sure are delicious. But because they don't want to waste food, the maid declines. Hiraku receives a message from Yuri via Frau Rem, in which she expresses her desire for another dress and some more apples. Frau Rem continues by saying that Yuri loved the garments Zabuton created and is curious as to whether Zabuton can make any more for her. Hiraku usually takes a bath alone after supper and after a little nap, although he was really in the ladies' bath for a while. The elves begin to follow Hiraku after his bath, which usually makes him uneasy. They are still watching him, even in his room, and he fools them into exposing themselves. He then gives God another expression of gratitude for the wonderful life he has been granted before passing out. Making alcohol is often what the dwarves are doing all the time. Although Hiraku believed they would be inebriated all the time, they approach their work with a great deal of seriousness and abstain from alcohol when at work. They also request that he triple the amount of grapes produced, and Hiraku concurs. Hiraku is told by Sena, who comes racing up, that there is a strange man. The guy is bowing to the wooden god sculptures Hiraku created, as Hiraku discovers when he goes to check on him. Hiraku next ponders how he managed to enter without the angels or Zabuton noticing. Ru knows that he is the progenitor, Vargreif, who is overjoyed to see her. Vargreif claims that he didn't believe she was expecting when he first learned about it, but that it appears to be the case. Usually they maintain their bloodline via blood packs and pregnancies are uncommon, but the government states that children are treasure and instructs her to look after it. Ru says that he can consider him to be his grandpa, but Hiraku questions who he is. The key to living a long life, according to Vargreif, is to occasionally delete his memory, with the exception of the crucial details like his name and clan. He claims to be 4,000 years old. Vargreif apologizes for arriving to the village unannounced, stating that he had only meant to browse and go, but he was drawn to the statue under the tree because it was a beautiful representation of the great creator. Vargreif tells Hiraku that he met God at birth, and God advised him to do his best despite having a somewhat odd physique. Vargreif believes that Hiraku is a vampire because of his strange physique. It must be fantastic to live to such a status, Vargreif says, because he has been attempting to recall what God looked like. Hiraku understands that he wants the statue and tells him that he is unable to offer it to him because it belongs to the community, but he will create him a new one. Vargreif enjoys it after turning him into a statue. He wants to know how much it would cost him, but Hiraku would not accept payment for such a thing. Then Vargreif says that he will have to consider what he can do in return for him. Vargreif goes to a major temple after he departs the village. The head priest there greets him warmly, pointing out that 50 years have passed since his previous visit. What is the ideal location to put a statue? Vargreif asks, as he expresses his desire to enshrine one. The priest tells us that it's where the statue of the creator deity, which was created by the renowned artist Turuk, is located. The The priest agrees to Vargreif's request to relocate it in order to make room for the new statue. The priest is taken aback by the sculpture and speculates about the artist's identity in order to pay tribute to him. However, Vargreif believes it would be best if they refrained from doing so, since Hiraku does not appear to be the kind of person who would value such things and would prefer to live in peace. Vargreif instructs the priest to tell the other temples and they all to be respectful of the Taiju village, claiming that they secretly support him. Hiraku receives a stunning piano from Vargreif. Vargreif then says it's a gift to commemorate Ru's pregnancy, even if Hiraku doesn't want to accept it as payment. The piano is moved by Hiraku to the dining room. The women of Three Hall recognize that the piano is exclusive to the great temples and is used for important ceremonies. They choose to treat it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance. They become too terrified to play on it, though, as they are afraid of breaking or destroying it. Then the three of them question Hiraku about whether he might get them a piano so that they may practice on it. Michael Garoun gets Hiraku a practice piano, despite his inability to comprehend why they don't like playing on the one they have now. Many of the girls come to love the piano and attempt to learn how to play it. But because they also play on it at night, Hiraku have difficulty sleeping. Hiraku asks everyone to take a break for lunch, but he keeps working until Ru tells him to stop and join the others. He worries about her being active, but she reassures him that it's okay, and mentions she needs to stay fit. The other girls are very nice and care about Ru, but she tells them she's alright, though her issue is that she can't have alcohol. The three killer angels ask Hiraku to get rid of all the alcohol. He then discovers that the girls have decided to stop drinking for Ru, but not being able to drink is driving them a bit mad. Because of this, the angels think that selling the alcohol might help eliminate the temptation. Hiraku feels they might regret getting rid of the alcohol, since it can't be made quickly again. He proposes that they consider how the taste of alcohol changes as it ages. Donovan and the other dwarfs are confused and wonder if they did something wrong, since no one wants to drink anymore. After Hiraku explains the situation, Donovan feels relieved and says they shouldn't decrease the production. Instead, they should make more. Hiraku agrees, believing that eventually everyone will drink more to catch up on what they missed. Ru's pregnancy is progressing well, and the time for her to give birth is getting close. The whole village begins to give her different gifts. That evening, Ru senses it's time, and later she gives birth during the night. In the morning, Hiraku meets his son, Alfred, and holds him in his arms. A week has gone by, and Hiraku remembers how he used to live by himself and how things have changed since he became a father. He isn't certain if his child is part vampire, because right now, he just seems like a regular human. As he thinks back to everyone who gave gifts, he decides to show his appreciation for their kindness. He gathers the girls to share his idea of starting a new system. He gives them reward medals made of silver coins and tells them they can exchange them for things they want. Tia realizes this is similar to money, and Hiraku agrees, saying he believes the village will eventually need its own currency. Until now, Hiraku has been collecting all items and sharing them with everyone. If someone needed something, they would just ask him, but with more people around, it became too hard for him to manage everything alone. They consider if they could keep trading goods, but Hiraku points out that people might see the value of different items in various ways, which is why he wants to implement currency. Since changing to a currency system all at once could cause confusion, Hiraku plans to start by giving out coins as rewards. He gives each person 3 coins, but since there are many wolves and spiders, he hands out 30 medals to each group. Some people start trading them immediately, while others prefer to hold on to them. Hiraku begins receiving more custom furniture and toy orders, and he feels like he is actually working harder than before. Soon they have a big celebration for the birth of Hiraku's son, where everyone finally gets to drink again. Ru brings a wooden hammer that Donovan had given her earlier, and the dwarf brings a big barrel, claiming it contains a new type of wine they created and that they need the wooden hammer to open it. Donovan is curious about how the wine tastes, but Ru explains that she can't drink it yet since she is breastfeeding, although she enjoys watching the others drink. Donovan then suggests they bottle some wine to enjoy later. Hiraku thinks this is a great idea, and says they can save it until Alfred is old enough to drink and enjoy it together. In the demonic kingdom, Bezel informs them that Hiraku's village has welcomed a baby. They now understand that they cannot conquer the village and are looking for ways to maintain a good relationship with them. Glatz suggests marrying someone from the kingdom to someone from the village, but the demon lord misunderstands and thinks they want to marry Yuri, which he opposes. Tia, Hakuren, and Frarem inform Hiraku that a group of people wants to come here to get away from a conflict. When Hiraku learns there are more than 100 of them, he thinks they will need to create another village to accommodate all those individuals. Ru then suggests that they should go ahead with the plan. The girls are on board with this because it allows more people to settle in and propose naming it the Great Tree Village too. Hiraku mentions it will require a lot of effort, but the girls are eager to do their best. Hiraku agrees. and they begin discussing where to establish the new village. The Great Tree Village is thriving. It's bustling with life. The fields are full and everyone is happy. But there's one tiny problem. They're about to receive over 100 new residents. The village is already getting a bit cramped, and Hiraku, being the responsible mayor he is, realizes they need a plan. He's not just building a garden anymore, he's basically playing a high-stakes game of SimCity. After a quick meeting with his advisors, who are mostly powerful women with various horns and wings, they decide the only solution is to build a brand new village from scratch. And just like that, the project New Village is born. Hiraku scouts out a new location further downstream. He's accompanied by Ria and some of the other high elves, who are basically the architects of this operation. They find a spot with a massive standout tree, not quite as grand as the Great Tree, but it's got character. Now, usually clearing a forest for a new settlement would take months of hard labor. But remember, Hiraku has the almighty farming tool. This thing is the Swiss Army knife of god-tier equipment. He pulls it out and prepares to clear the path. But wait, he doesn't just chop trees, he does it with style. As he starts hacking away, he shouts out various noodle dishes for some reason. Wonton noodles, thwack. The trees stand no chance against the noodle-powered fury of his magical hoax thing. While the men are doing the heavy lifting, the rest of the village isn't exactly sitting around. We get a glimpse of the absolute chaos of logistics. Keeping track of food, supplies, and building materials for hundreds of people is a nightmare. Poor Florem and her team of clerks are buried under mountains of paperwork. Seriously, these girls are doing more math than a NASA engineer on launch day. One of them, Latiazzi, looks like she's about 10 seconds away from a total mental breakdown. Back at the new site, progress is moving at a breakneck pace. Thanks to Hiraku's OP tool and the magic-infused labor of the elves and lizardmen, they've already got roads cleared, irrigation ducts dug, and a massive reservoir built. Hiraku even takes a break to carve a wooden monument for Zabuton, the village's giant spider protector, who is low-key the MVP of the series. Just as they're finishing up the initial infrastructure, a giant dragon descends from the sky. It's Drime, the gatekeeper dragon, who occasionally acts as the village's delivery service. He's brought the first batch of new residents, the Minotaurs. Now, when you hear Minotaur, you probably think of huge, scary bullmen in a labyrinth. But this is an isekai, so they're more like tall, muscular guys with cow horns who are surprisingly polite. Their leader, Gordon, introduces himself and explains that they were kicked out of their previous home and have been wandering looking for a place to stay. Hiraku, being the ultimate softie, immediately welcomes them and orders a massive batch of rice porridge to be made. But there's a hilarious oversight. Hiraku built the houses to fit humans and elves. When Gordon and his crew try to enter, they realize they're way too tall. It's like trying to fit a professional basketball player into a preschool classroom. The sight of these massive cowmen trying to squeeze through tiny doors is pure comedy gold. Hiraku realizes he's going to need to do some serious renovations. But the dragon delivery service isn't done yet. No sooner have the Minotaurs settled in for their porridge than more people arrive. This time it's a group of centaurs. Leading them is Gruwald, a centaur lady with a serious attitude. She walks in like she owns the place, demanding to speak to the person in charge and looking down on everyone. She's clearly expecting some humble village mayor she can boss around. This leads to one of the best know-your-place moments in the episode. Gruwald is acting all high and mighty until she meets Latiazzi, one of the village clerks who was just crying over paperwork a few minutes ago. Gruwald starts barking orders at her, thinking she's just a random village girl. But Latiazzi calmly drops the mic. She's actually the daughter of Count Droa, a high-ranking noble in the Demon Kingdom. The centaurs' faces go from "I'm the boss" to "oh crap, I just insulted a high-ranking official in record time." It turns out Count Chrome, one of the Demon Lord's 4 generals, is also personally involved in helping these refugees. Gruwald immediately drops to her knees, or rather her 4 legs, and starts begging for forgiveness. The power dynamic shifts so fast it'll give you whiplash. It's a classic isekai trope where the arrogant newcomer realizes the simple village is actually filled with the most powerful people in the world. Hiraku just stands there in the background, confused as usual. But guess what? The centaurs have the same problem as the Minotaurs. They're half horse, meaning they don't exactly fit into standard elven beds. They end up sharing the stables with the cows for the night, which is a bit of a downgrade for them. But hey, at least it's a roof over their heads. Just when you think the guest list is full, the Lamia, snake people, show up with yet another group. These are the Nunu Daphne, or wood spirits. They look like beautiful green-haired girls, but there's a catch. They can turn into trees. Their representative is a talking tree stump named Igu. Yes, you heard that right, a talking stump. The Nunu Daphne are pretty low maintenance. They don't need food or beds. They just need good soil and lots of sunlight. They literally stand out in the middle of the field all night, enjoying the fragrant soil that Hiraku has meticulously cultivated. It's a surreal sight, a field of beautiful girls just standing still like garden gnomes under the moonlight. By the end of the day, Hiraku is exhausted. He went from running a quiet farm to managing a diverse refugee camp for multiple species. He looks at his blueprints and realizes he needs to design even bigger, more complex houses to accommodate everyone's unique needs. Hiraku convenes a meeting with representatives from each group: Gordon for the Minotaurs, Gruwald for the Centaurs, and a representative for the Wood Spirits, to discuss their specific living requirements and the layout of new settlements. The initial meeting is marked by the extreme deference of the new arrivals. Gruwald, in particular, is so overwhelmed by Hiraku's presence that she describes herself as little more than a flake of dust in the corner of his room. Hiraku, always humble, finds this level of respect awkward and tries to get everyone to relax. He decides that the best way to integrate everyone while respecting their physical needs is to establish 3 satellite villages connected to the Great Tree Village by roads and irrigation channels. The construction phase highlights the unique strengths of Hiraku's companions. To clear the dense forest for the new roads and settlements, he enlists the help of the dragons Lulutiu and Lastus Moon. While their dragon breaths are incredibly efficient, Hiraku has to constantly monitor them to ensure they don't accidentally incinerate the entire forest. This segment is filled with comedic beats, as Hiraku tries to manage the overkill tendencies of his powerful allies. Once the land is cleared, the actual building begins, showcasing the architectural needs of the different races. The second village is designed specifically for the Minotaurs, featuring high ceilings and oversized furniture. Hiraku notes with a smile that their chairs are so large they look like tables to him, and he finds himself feeling like a child again when sitting with them. The third village is tailored for the Centaurs, utilizing stable-like structures that suit their half-horse bodies. A clever detail is the use of rope-drawn curtains instead of standard doors, as Centaurs struggle with traditional door handles. While the mobile races build their homes, Hiraku finds a perfect role for the Nunu Daphne. Since these wood spirits prefer to remain stationary, Hiraku assigns them to important junctions as sentries and messengers. They possess a unique telepathic ability to communicate with one another across long distances, making them a perfect relay network for the growing community. Additionally, Hiraku realizes they can provide light at night, acting as living streetlights to guide travelers between the villages. With the basic infrastructure in place, Hiraku settles on a simple naming convention: Village 1, Ichinomura; Village 2, Ninomura for the Minotaurs; and Village 3, San Nomura for the Centaurs. Gordon is appointed the representative of Village 2, and Gruwald takes the lead for Village 3. As the residents settle in, new challenges arise regarding food production and security. It quickly becomes clear that neither the Minotaurs nor the Centaurs are particularly suited for hunting in the treacherous Forest of Death, which is inhabited by monsters far stronger than those in typical regions. Hiraku decides that the village's hunting needs will remain the primary responsibility of his original pack of Inferno wolves, who find the forest's monsters to be little more than easy prey. For agriculture, Hiraku wants the new villages to be self-sufficient without relying solely on his almighty farming tool. However, standard farming proves difficult in the forest's unique soil. Gordon steps up as a farming senpai, suggesting they use straw to keep the soil warm and plant wheat that can survive the winter frost. This collaborative effort emphasizes the theme of community building and shared knowledge. The episode also touches on the spiritual side of life in this new world. Hiraku carves wooden statues of the creator god and the god of agriculture as a gesture of gratitude. When the Minotaurs see the statues, they are impressed by the craftsmanship, but note that Hiraku's interpretation of the deities is quite unique compared to their own traditions. This provides a gentle reminder of the cultural differences between the various races inhabiting the forest. In terms of logistics, the Centaurs quickly find their niche by establishing the Centaur Delivery Service. Utilizing their natural speed and strength, they transport goods and messages between the villages with incredible efficiency, though their competitive nature occasionally leads to cart-flipping accidents as they try to set new route records. Amidst this progress, Hiraku has a humorous encounter involving a regular horse he received from a merchant. His attempt to learn how to ride leads to an awkward moment with Gruwald, who seems to feel a strange mix of rivalry and pride regarding her own centaur physiology compared to a common beast. Finally, Hiraku reflects on the demographics of his expanding territory. While his original village was heavily skewed toward a female population, the new races have brought a more balanced mix of men and women. However, he learns that interspecies marriage is rare due to physical differences, meaning the races will likely remain distinct communities within the broader village network, despite the underlying concerns about the future. As winter blankets the forest of beginnings, Hiraku Machio takes a well-deserved break from his rigorous farming duties to enjoy the cozy confines of his hearth. This season marks another cycle since he began his new life, and the village has changed drastically. With the addition of residents from the newly established second and third villages, including minotaurs and centaurs, the population has surged. However, Hiraku notices a strange trend. Their food supplies aren't diminishing as planned. A consultation with the village representatives reveals a poignant truth. The new residents, accustomed to harsh lives of scarcity, are instinctively rationing their portions to the point of near starvation. To remedy this, Hiraku suggests they frames the consumption as a necessity to prevent the more perishable items from spoiling, effectively giving the villagers permission to feast without guilt. Amidst these administrative tasks, a light-hearted conflict arises involving Mamu, who is in charge of the Nyunyu Daphne, the tree spirits. Mamu is distraught because her charges seem to need absolutely nothing. They spend their winters peacefully as trees, requiring no food or special care. Hiraku comforts her, but a secondary problem is revealed. When the tree spirits do take human form, they frequently forget the concept of clothing, leading to awkward encounters for the more modest minotaurs. This domestic tranquility is soon broken by Hiraku's desire to introduce a traditional winter treat from his old world, mochi. He oversees the creation of a large wooden mortar and pestle, fascinating the villagers who have never seen such tools. The mochi-making process becomes a central community event. Initially, the magical nature of the residents leads to some comical failures. When one villager puts too much power into a strike, the rice compacts so densely it transforms into a glowing green gemstone rather than dough. Jokingly suggests using explosives to pulp the rice faster, a suggestion Hiraku quickly vetoes. Eventually, they find their rhythm, and the village enjoys a massive feast. They sample mochi with sweet soy sauce, roasted soybean powder, kinako, and a vibrant green edamame paste known as zunda. Hiraku also prepares zenzai, a warm red bean soup that is a perfect antidote to the winter chill. The celebration is bolstered by Donovan, the dwarf, who brings a fresh batch of doboroku, unfiltered rice wine, which is an instant hit among the adults. Romantic drama unexpectedly interrupts the season when Gratz Britoa, one of the four great generals of the Demon Lord's kingdom, arrives with a dramatic purpose. He falls head over heels for Ronana, a Minotaur woman from the second village, and offers a formal kneeling proposal in full armor. This sparks a cross-cultural discussion about marriage, with Ronana explaining that in her culture, the village head's permission is paramount. While Gratz is so overcome with passion that he threatens to resign his post to stay by her side, Hiraku acts as a voice of reason. He insists that Ronana's personal feelings must be the deciding factor. Ultimately, the two agree to begin a courtship through the exchange of letters, much to the relief of the Demon Lord's aide, Bezel, who feared losing a general to village life. As winter begins to wane, Hiraku's culinary nostalgia turns towards sushi. He enlists the help of the merchant Michael to source seaweed, nori. When Michael delivers a barrel of raw, wet seaweed, the villagers are skeptical, comparing it to common forest moss. Hiraku demonstrates the meticulous process of cleaning, chopping, and pressing the seaweed into thin sheets. Utilizing the magic of the resident high elves and mages to dehydrate the sheets, they successfully produce dark, crisp nori. Because the concept of raw fish is still seen as dangerous and unappealing to the villagers, Hiraku adapts the recipe into futomaki, thick rolls, and salad rolls, using cooked ingredients like eggs, vegetables, and real crab meat. The introduction of sushi is a major success. The episode concludes with the arrival of the first thaws of spring. Hiraku decides that the village needs a grand festival to celebrate their growth and the coming of the new planting season. He gathers the village leaders to brainstorm ideas, but the cultural gap remains wide. Realizing that a consensus is impossible, Hiraku implements a lottery system. He draws a slip from a box, revealing the chosen theme, a martial arts competition. While Hiraku initially worries that it might be too violent, the villagers are thrilled at the prospect of showcasing their strength, setting the stage for an intense and competitive spring season in the Forest of Beginnings. The Great Tree Village is in full bloom, and with the change in season, Hiraku, the village mayor, is busy planting a colorful array of pansies to decorate the communal areas. However, the tranquil atmosphere is frequently interrupted by the sounds of clashing steel and heavy breathing. Hiraku notices that the various residents, elves, lizardmen, and beastmen alike, are training with an almost obsessive intensity. Realizing that the village has grown significantly and the residents possess an abundance of pent-up energy, Hiraku decides to organize a grand event to channel this spirit into a celebratory festival. Thus, the first ever Great Tree Village martial arts competition is born, intended to serve both as a harvest celebration and a way to foster camaraderie among the diverse inhabitants. As the plans for the tournament take shape, Hiraku, assisted by the ever-reliable Daga and the village leaders, constructs a massive arena. The rules are divided into two distinct categories: the open tournament for general villagers and the warrior tournament for the village's elite fighters. To maintain safety during these high-stakes duels, Hiraku uses his universal farming tool to create enchanted headbands. These headbands are infused with protective magic that unravels when a participant receives a decisive blow, signaling their defeat without causing actual physical harm. Beyond the arena itself, the village is transformed into a bustling fairground with food stalls offering harvest treats and designated spectator seating for guests. The excitement reaches a fever pitch with the arrival of high-profile visitors. Yuri, who has been living in the village, brings her father, Galgardo. To Hiraku's shock, he discovers that this unassuming, doting father is actually the titular demon lord of the Galgardo kingdom. Despite his fearsome reputation, Galgardo proves to be remarkably polite, though he is clearly awestruck by the village's high standard of living. Shortly after, the Emperor Dragon Doze, Hakuren's father, makes his grand entrance. These legendary figures of the world find themselves sitting side by side, humbled by Hiraku's hospitality. The morning kicks off with the Open Division, featuring characters whose primary roles aren't necessarily combat-focused. We see Rosalind, one of the village clerks, facing off against the beast woman Mamu. While the stakes are technically lower, the participants show surprising grit. Rosalind, usually found buried in paperwork, demonstrates that living in the dangerous forest has sharpened her instincts. Another notable match involves the elder dwarf Donovan, who uses his immense physical strength and experience to secure a victory, much to the delight of the crowd. This segment emphasizes that every member of the village, regardless of their daily job, has grown stronger through their shared life in this harsh but rewarding land. The atmosphere shifts dramatically as the warrior tournament begins. The first round pits the Inferno Wolf Uno against the Lamia Junea. Junea fights valiantly, but she is clearly intimidated by the wolf, as his pack nearly wiped out her people in the past. Uno showcases the sheer, terrifying speed and elemental power that makes Inferno wolves the forest's top predators, securing a swift win. Following this, Makura, one of Zabuton's many spider offspring, enters the ring against Daga, the lizardman leader. Despite Daga's martial skill, Makura's strategic use of silk and wall running allows it to outmaneuver the lizardman, trapping him in a web and earning a win that surprises even Hiraku, who begins to realize the spiders might be the village's secret power. The elite matches continue with a fierce duel between Ya, the mountain elf, and Garf, a guest warrior from Howling Village. This fight is a blur of high-speed swordplay and brute force, highlighting the world-class talent now residing in or visiting the village. Next, Leah, the high elf leader, takes on the angel Gran Maria. Because Gran Maria has the advantage of flight, the rules are momentarily adjusted. Their battle is a breathtaking spectacle of mid-air archery versus precision swordplay. Both women push themselves to their absolute limits, culminating in a spectacular exchange that leaves them both exhausted, resulting in a rare and respected draw. The competition then moves to a highly anticipated exhibition match between the village's two most prominent women, Lu, the vampire, and Tia, the angel. What begins as a friendly demonstration quickly escalates into a serious magical duel fueled by their long-standing personal rivalry. They disappear from sight, zipping through the air at supersonic speeds, their clashes creating shockwaves that rattle the spectator stands. They trade massive fireballs and light-based spells that illuminate the sky, turning the arena into a kaleidoscope of magical chaos. Tia wins, but later in the finals is defeated by Zabuton. The episode concludes with an awards ceremony where Hiraku presents handcrafted medals and a crown to the champions. The referees also want a mock battle: the ancient dragon Hakuren and the dragon Lasti. They do not hold back, utilizing their draconic strength and breath attacks. The sheer force of their clash is so immense that it creates a localized explosion, which, despite the total destruction of the stage and several food stalls, the crowd erupts in cheers, celebrating the incredible display of power. As the sun sets over the ruins of the arena, while Hiraku is slightly stressed about the repair work ahead and the dangerous enthusiasm of his residents, he is ultimately moved by the joy the festival brought. The Demon Lord and the Emperor Dragon are seen enjoying the local brew, already inquiring about the date of next year's tournament. The episode opens with Hiraku and his group harvesting a fresh batch of daikon radishes. During the process, Hiraku discovers a botanical quirk. The top part of the radish is sweet and refreshing, while the bottom tip is intensely spicy. He accidentally lets Sina, the energetic fox girl, bite into the spicy end, causing her to puff steam from her ears in surprise. As they decide to use the spicy tips for pickling, the Beastkin children arrive with a warning that weird people have appeared at the great tree. Hiraku investigates and finds two dignified strangers performing a deep ceremonial bow toward the tree. They are revealed to be Valgrife, the progenitor of vampires, and Fushu, a great priestess of the Koran religion. Valgrife is an ancient, laid-back vampire who jokes about his inability to stay dead, while Fushu is a woman of such high religious stature that parades are typically held in her honor. A mother's plea and the alchemist's quest. The strangers haven't come for conquest, but for help. Fushu explains that her son is dying from a complex, multi-layered magical illness that has baffled every healer they've consulted. They have traveled to this remote village specifically to seek the legendary alchemist Flora Sakutu, who has taken up residence there. Flora examines the case and admits it is a formidable challenge, requiring incredibly rare materials. The entire village mobilizes for the hunt. Tyr the angel flies to the snowy peaks for a holy drop flower, the mountain elves venture into the woods to capture a surprisingly powerful walking mushroom, and the dragon protector Drime casually provides a magical stone, a dragon's tear, that he had been using as a humble doorstop. The miraculous cure and the glowing shrine. The brewing process is a grueling series of experiments. In one memorable moment, Hiraku helps Flora pull a rare medicinal plant from a pot, only for it to let out a soul-piercing, mandrake-like scream that leaves him reeling. Throughout the days of research, Fushu remains by the great tree, praying without ceasing. Her devotion eventually triggers a divine miracle, providing the final burst of magical heat needed to stabilize the potion into a glowing blue elixir. With the medicine complete, the visitors prepare to depart via a massive black portal. Valgrife casually suggests they will return the favor within 10 years, much to the villagers' amusement. After they leave, Hiraku notices that Fushu's prayers have left the village's small shrine statues with a permanent blinding glow so bright it keeps the local demon spiders awake at night, leading him to install doors to block the light when it isn't prayer time. The experimental nut orchard. Peace returns, and Hiraku focuses on his passion for farming in a specialized experimental area. Using the almighty farming tool, he expands his crop variety to include nuts. He first grows sesame, marveling at how the pods actually look, before moving on to larger trees yielding walnuts and almonds. He also discovers peanuts, which grow underground in a way that fascinates the local girls. The most peculiar discovery is the cashew tree, bearing bright apple-like fruits with a single nut hanging oddly from the bottom. Hiraku roasts the nuts over an open fire, creating a fragrant snack that is an instant hit. He notes that because roasted nuts keep for a long time, they will be an excellent trade commodity for the demonic kingdom. Parachutes in the wine slime pilot. Always looking for safety improvements, Hiraku decides to invent a parachute for cases where he might fall off a dragon mid-flight. He tests a prototype with Tyr, and a peculiar volunteer steps forward, the wine slime. This specific slime developed a permanent buzz after falling into a wine barrel and now hangs around the drinking parties. Tyr carries the slime high into the clouds and releases it. The slime floats down gracefully, clearly enjoying the flight. Hiraku is impressed by its bravery and designates it the village's official test pilot for future aerial experiments. The Mountain Elves and Ya's muscular ambition. The final segment focuses on the Mountain Elves and their leader, Ya. In their workshop, the elves are tasked with making standard bowls, but Ya's bigger is better philosophy leads her to create a bowl so massive it's practically a bathtub. Her assistant Hiturto explains that while the elves respect Hiraku's fair leadership, Ya has developed a massive romantic crush on him. Believing that elf lore suggests brute strength is the ultimate way to win a man's heart, Ya undergoes a grueling 100-day training regimen to lift massive boulders. A romantic misunderstanding. Ya eventually corners Hiraku in the fields and hoists an enormous mountain of a rock over her head to show off her physical prowess. Instead of being charmed, Hiraku is terrified for her safety and begs her to put the dangerous rock down immediately. Ya misinterprets his genuine concern for her well-being as a sign of deep affection, ending the day feeling like a romantic success, while Hiraku is just relieved that the boulder didn't crush his best worker. The episode opens with an atmospheric establishing shot of the Forest of Death, a place where the very environment warns intruders of their impending doom. The narration by Hiraku Machio, the village mayor, explains the unsettling silence of the woods. Birds refuse to fly here because the canopy is the hunting ground of the demon spiders, the offspring of the village's guardian, Zabaton. This introduction sets the stage for the arrival of outsiders who haven't yet learned that the Great Tree Village is the only oasis of civilization in this lethal wilderness. The quiet is broken when a patrol of Kuro's wolves and several of Zabaton's spiders corner a group of winged intruders. When Hiraku arrives at the scene, he finds a group of angels and harpies immobilized, wrapped tightly in high-quality spider silk, and looking quite humiliated. Among the captives is Kirbit, a high-ranking angel and the daughter of the angel chief, Malbit. Unlike Tia and Gran Maria, who have integrated into the village, Kirbit arrives with an air of divine superiority and extreme skepticism. She is appalled to see her fellow angels living what she perceives as a life of depravity, cooking, cleaning, and farming for a human man. In her eyes, the angels have abandoned their sacred traditions, specifically the trials of the angels, which are meant to ensure that any partner of an angel is of the highest caliber. To resolve the tension and prevent a diplomatic incident with the angel leadership, Tia suggests that Hiraku undergo these trials himself to prove that he is a worthy leader and partner. The first challenge is the trial of wealth. Kirbit, assuming Hiraku is a mere peasant in a remote forest, demands a tribute of 777 gold coins, a sum she believes is impossible for him to acquire. She expects him to grovel. Instead, Hiraku remains calm. He reaches into his storage and pulls out a massive glowing gemstone, a rare dragon stone, sometimes referred to as a philosopher's stone in various translations, that he casually unearthed while tilling the soil with his almighty farming tool. When Kirbit's jaw drops at the sight of a gem worth thousands of gold coins, Hiraku, genuinely worried he hasn't given enough, begins pulling out handfuls of other rare ores and jewels he considers rocks from the field. The sheer contrast between Kirbit's expectation of poverty and the village's actual abundance creates a comedic beat that leaves the angel auditor physically staggered. Moving to the Trial of Wisdom, Kirbit presents a traditional angel game that functions as a test of strategic foresight. It is a variation of a stone removal game, where players take turns picking up 1, 2, or 3 stones from a pile, and the person forced to take the last stone is the loser. Kirbit is immensely confident, claiming the angels have perfected the mathematics of this game over millennia. However, Hiraku immediately recognizes it as Neem, a classic mathematical game from Earth. Having played it many times in his previous life, he knows the winning strategy instantly. He plays with a relaxed, almost bored expression, while Kirbit grows increasingly frantic as she realizes that no matter how many stones she takes, she has been maneuvered into a losing position. Even when she demands a rematch with a different number of stones, Hiraku's mathematical certainty remains absolute, further bruising her pride. The third challenge is the trial of martial prowess. Rather than a destructive battle that might level the village, Tia proposes a more controlled test. Kirbit nominates Lulusi Lu, the legendary vampire princess and Hiraku's wife, as his opponent. Lu, understanding the situation perfectly, gives Hiraku a subtle, knowing wink. Instead of a clash of magic and steel, they engage in a high-stakes game of look that way, a test of reflexes and intuition. With a swift movement and a synchronized reaction, Hiraku defeats his wife. While Kirbit screams that this is a mockery of the trials, Tia and the other villagers point out that the fact that a world-renowned vampire and high-tier angels follow Hiraku's orders is a greater display of prowess than any physical duel could ever provide. The fourth challenge, the Trial of Negotiation, is intended to be the final nail in Hiraku's coffin. Kirbit tasks him with negotiating with the impossible gatekeeper dragon of the Guru Granth Mountains, a creature the angels fear as a primal force of nature. Just as Kirbit finishes her dramatic buildup about the dragon's ferocity, the dragon himself, Drime, happens to fly into the village for a casual visit. Rather than a terrifying confrontation, Drime lands gracefully and greets Hiraku with deep respect, calling him mayor and presenting him with high-quality monster meat as a gift. Drime even apologizes for dropping in unannounced, acting more like a polite neighbor than a legendary beast. Kirbit is reduced to a literal ghost-like state, her spirit visually leaving her body as she witnesses a dragon, a creature the angels treat with extreme caution, acting subservient to a man with a hoe. The final challenge is the Trial of Luck, a simple coin toss. Kirbit, now desperate and bordering on a breakdown, attempts to use wind magic to manipulate the coin in midair. However, Tia intervenes. As the coin spins, Tia simply steps forward and stomps on it, declaring Hiraku the winner. This final act of village justice forces Kirbit to concede defeat. In a quiet moment afterward, Tia explains to Hiraku that Kirbit's strictness comes from a place of insecurity. Her own mother had simplified the trials when she married, leading to years of gossip that Kirbit felt she had to erase by being twice as rigid. Seeing the genuine happiness of the angels and the incredible food they eat, Kirbit finally relaxes. She and the Harpies decide to stay in the village as guests, with the Harpies eventually forming an aerial security and messenger corps for the village. The tone shifts in the second half of the episode as a massive red dragon crash lands into the village square, causing a minor earthquake. This is Doors, the Dragon King and father of Hakuren. Unlike his usual majestic self, Doors is in a state of absolute panic, begging Hiraku to hide him from a terrifying demon. Shortly after, the demon arrives. It is Raime, Doors' wife and the Dragon Queen. She appears in her human form, looking elegant and polite, but she radiates an aura of such intense, suffocating pressure that even the village's strongest warriors take a step back. It is revealed that this isn't a war, but a marital dispute. Raime's love for Doors is so intense and heavy that she constantly stalks him, wanting to be with him every second of the day, which has driven the Dragon King to the brink of a nervous breakdown. Hiraku, acting as a mediator for the most powerful couple in the world, realizes that they have a massive communication gap. Doors is too afraid of his wife's power to tell her he needs space, and Raimi is so focused on her devotion that she doesn't realize she is smothering him. Hiraku suggests a human solution: the exchange of letters. He instructs both Doors and Raimi to sit in separate rooms and write down every grievance, every desire, and every boundary they have. He explains that words spoken in heat can be forgotten or misunderstood, but words written on paper allow for reflection. For the next few days, the Great Tree Village becomes a retreat for the warring dragons. Doors produces an enormous volume of scrolls, detailing how he just wants to go fishing alone once in a while, without her watching from the clouds. Raimi, initially shocked that her love was perceived as a burden, writes her own feelings of loneliness and her desire for more verbal affection. As they exchange these letters through Hiraku, the tension begins to dissipate. They aren't just fighting anymore, they are learning about each other for the first time in centuries. As the episode concludes, Doors and Raimi prepare to leave. They are seen walking together, not in a chase, but in a tentative, mutual understanding. Raimi promises to give Doors his fishing time, and Doors promises to be more present when they are together. They thank Hiraku for his unconventional wisdom, acknowledging that despite his humble appearance, he has a better grasp of the heart than any dragon or angel. After they're off, Hakurin jokingly suggests that maybe she should start writing her own list of demands for the mayor, causing Hiraku to laugh nervously. The episode opens with the exploration team makes their triumphant return from the uncharted depths of the newly discovered northern dungeon, proudly hauling back a massive bounty of formidable bloody vipers that are immediately handed over to headmaid Anne and the Oni maids to be converted into an extravagant, mouth-watering feast that fills the entire village square with an irresistible savory aroma. As the diverse community of humans, demi-humans, and magical creatures gathers around the long wooden tables to dig into the tender, succulent meat, which tastes remarkably like premium chicken or pork. The high elves and mountain elves casually drop a profoundly unsettling biological fact regarding their recent prey, explaining that a bloody viper possesses such potent cellular vitality that it can completely regenerate its entire massive body from scratch as long as its head remains fully intact. A vivid, grotesque mental image that the village chief Hiraku desperately tries to banish from his mind as he struggles to maintain his appetite amidst the casual talk of monstrous anatomy. The conversation shifts when the elves mention that giants spoke of hot water to the north, which Hiraku recognizes as an onsen. Driven by an overwhelming wave of nostalgia, Hiraku leaps to his feet and delivers a dramatically intense lecture to his completely bewildered, non-Japanese villagers, who have spent their lives viewing heated water merely as a utility for cooking or washing clothes, earnestly explaining to them the profound health, cultural, and circulatory benefits of a proper deep soak, describing it as the ultimate remedy for physical exhaustion and muscle fatigue. Determined, Hiraku organizes a hot spring expeditionary force, personally leading the trek alongside a team dressed in adorable explorer outfits custom-made by Zabuton. As they prepare to leave, the progenitor Vatic appears and uses his advanced teleportation magic to instantly warp the entire multi-species squad, including Hiraku, Lu, Tia, Flora, Lastisman, the elves, the lizardmen, and inferno wolves, directly to the snow-covered mountains outside the pyramid-shaped northern dungeon entrance. Expecting towering behemoths, Hiraku is amused to find that the local giant race looks like soft, fuzzy mascot characters from a children's show. These mascot creatures are currently panicking because an underground section of their home recently caved in, unleashing a horde of giant red-eyed earth rats and a lingering bloody viper. Right on cue, the frozen ground beneath them begins to violently buckle and shake as a massive, vicious earth rat bursts forth from the soil with its razor-sharp incisors bared, prompting an instantaneous and flawlessly executed tactical response from the vampire Lu and the angel Tia, who seamlessly combine their physical agility and destructive magical casting to launch the oversized rodent high into the stratosphere with a spectacular combo strike. Simultaneously, another burrowing rodent breaches the perimeter right next to Hiraku, who reacts with lightning-fast reflexes by morphing his multifunctional almighty farming tool into its heavy axe form, delivering a swift, decisive downward cleave that instantly neutralizes the monster, though the resulting explosion of messy, highly viscous purple monster slime completely drenches one of the poor inferno wolf pups standing nearby, leaving the once majestic beast looking thoroughly soaked, sticky, and comically miserable as it tries in vain to shake off the foul-smelling, gelatinous goop. Upon sitting down with the leader of the Fuzzy Giants to properly assess the full extent of the subterranean damage, Hiraku is hit with a sudden wave of profound guilt when the Giants casually explain that the catastrophic collapse of their cavern walls was actually an indirect, accidental side effect of the Great Tree Village's own intense, highly aggressive viper hunting exploits from a few days prior, which had severely destabilized the deep underground bedrock and permanently upset the delicate ecological balance of the mountain. Overcome with deep remorse for unwittingly causing so much chaos for these peaceful, gentle creatures, Hiraku immediately drops to his knees and executes a formal, deeply apologetic Japanese bow. But the incredibly hospitable and soft-spoken giants warmly wave off his concerns, reassuring him with gentle smiles that a violent confrontation with the subterranean pests was bound to happen eventually, and that they harbor absolutely no ill will toward the surface dwellers. Realizing that they are now facing a double challenge that requires immediate action, the group decides to split their forces into two highly specialized units. A whole expedition team tasked with venturing deep into the dark, structurally compromised tunnels to systematically purge the remaining earth rats and secure the interior, and a hot spring expedition team focused on surveying the surrounding alpine terrain to locate and claim the geothermal water source. Leading the surface team through the jagged, windswept rocky ridges, Hiraku, Tia, and the High Elves carefully trace the echoing, low-frequency rumble of rushing water and a series of rising plumes of thick white vapor until they finally stumble upon a massive, naturally occurring pool of steaming water nestled beautifully against the mountainside. Though their initial bursts of pure excitement are quickly dampened when they approach the edge and realize that the water is intensely scalding, bubbling violently at a near-boiling temperature that would easily cook any living creature, rather than provide a soothing, relaxing soak. The mountain elves and high elves immediately begin a thorough geological survey of the area and quickly identify the root cause of the extreme thermal activity, pointing out an abundant, glowing cluster of rare, highly concentrated hot stones, magical subterranean rocks that naturally trap immense amounts of geothermal energy and continuously radiate intense heat outward into the water supply. A discovery that causes Hiraku, ever the practical and forward-thinking farmer, to marvel in amazement as he notes in his mind that these hot stones could be carefully harvested and brought back to the Great Tree Village to serve as an invaluable eco-friendly resource for winter home heating, indoor cooking, and greenhouse temperature regulation during the freezing months. Turning his attention back to the immediate crisis of the boiling pool, Hiraku utilizes his modern structural knowledge and the versatile, earth-shaped power of the almighty farming tool to design a clever, highly efficient water regulation system entirely on the fly, directing the hardworking team to tap into a nearby, ice-cold mountain river and carve out a series of precise wooden aqueducts, equipped with adjustable, heavy-duty wooden sluice gates. By strategically channeling a controlled, steady stream of crisp, freezing river water directly into the scalding geothermal basin, they are able to perfectly balance the opposing thermal currents, rapidly cooling the pool down to an absolutely flawless, perfectly regulated, and deeply therapeutic bathing temperature. Meanwhile, far below the surface, within the pitch-black, winding, and damp caverns of the northern dungeon, the whole expedition team, consisting of the powerful vampire Lu, her magically gifted sister Flora, the mighty dragon princess Lastisman, and the ancient progenitor Vatic, pushes cautiously forward through the shadows, tracking the path of destruction left behind by the burrowing rodents, until their progress is abruptly halted by a monumental ancient stone boulder heavily etched with intricate archaic hieroglyphs and cryptic text belonging to a long-forgotten civilization. Before Flora or Lu can even begin to examine or decipher the mysterious inscriptions, the shadows around them suddenly come alive with a chilling energy as an eerie, floating legion of heavily armed undead skeleton soldiers materializes out of the darkness, led by a menacing, towering skeleton commander whose empty eye sockets glow with an ominous, piercing red light as he rasps a terrifying warning, demanding that the living intruders immediately vacate his sacred domain or face eternal damnation. Unfazed by the terrifying spectral display and eager to show off her immense power, the overconfident dragon princess Lastisman steps forward, completely ignoring Lu's frantic, explicit warnings regarding the extreme, catastrophic dangers of utilizing explosive fire magic within the tightly enclosed, structurally compromised spaces of an underground cavern network. Dismissing the logical safety warnings with a confident smirk, Lasti loudly declares that she will simply aim her attack directly upward to avoid causing any lateral structural damage to the walls, and she unhesitatingly unleashes a massive, concentrated beam of ultra-destructive purple draconic fire breath from her jaws. The sheer, overwhelming thermal force of the dragonfire instantly incinerates the entire undead army into fine white ash, but the massive kinetic energy violently rips through the ancient mountain bedrock, punching a gigantic, clean vertical hole straight through the mountain's solid stone ceiling and triggering a raging chaotic forest fire on the surface world above, directly adjacent to where Hiraku's hot spring construction site is located. Startled by the sudden deafening explosion, the massive eruption of thick black smoke, and a sudden rain of burning debris, Hiraku and a flying Tia instantly spring into crisis management mode, utilizing high-level water magic to quickly douse the spreading flames and successfully contain the forest fire before it can threaten their newly constructed outpost, leaving a thoroughly blackened, soot-covered, and tearfully apologetic dragon princess and a handful of comically singed skeleton remains as a hilarious testament to Lasti's absurdly excessive overkill. Down in the cavern, the immortal progenitor calmly and dryly watches the absolute structural chaos unfold around him, casually deciding that it is best to simply stand back and let the powerful, hot-headed girls fully vent their destructive magical energies until they are completely satisfied. As the chaotic afternoon transitions into a peaceful, serene evening, women's bath and custom-built steam sauna room, the girls happily unwind in the warm, healing waters, letting the cool mountain breeze wash over them as they playfully gossip, scheme to establish a permanent magical research laboratory on the mountain site, and comically debate the long-term romantic pairings and future marriage prospects of the village's newest generation of newborn babies. Hiraku and the tireless, hard-working lizardmen proudly unveil the final fruits of their intense manual labor. A fully realized, breathtakingly luxurious, open-air hot spring resort, complete with separate, gender-segregated bathing zones, rustic wooden changing rooms, a comfortable tatami-style rest area, and traditional wooden washing buckets. Slipping into the soothing, mineral-rich, perfectly regulated water under a vast, crystal-clear canopy of twinkling stars, Hiraku and his loyal lizardmen companions share a deeply satisfying, quiet moment of pure bliss, collectively sighing in relief as they marvel at how a wild day filled with sudden monster attacks, magical explosions, and heavy construction can culminate in such absolute, tranquil relaxation. The dark blue-tinted depths of an underground cavern stir as a skeleton clad in armor with glowing yellow lines awakens beside an ancient pedestal. Ability, a single crimson light flickers within its hollow eye socket as it identifies itself only as the Lord of Death. It remembers nothing of its past or identity. Viability. The only thing remaining in its mind is an absolute command echoing from the moment of its revival. Break the ancient seal binding the territory. Viability. Accepting that order as its sole purpose, the Lord of Death channels dark magic to create a small earthen golem. Realizing one creature is far too weak to break through the underground bedrock alone, it summons an entire army of identical golems. Viability. Under strict commands, the tireless workers begin digging through the cavern walls, guided by the Lord of Death's instinctive sense of where the seal lies hidden. Ability. After an exhausting period of excavation, the golems uncover a massive black stone buried deep within the earth. The Lord of Death stares at the monolith with satisfaction, but immediately senses that it is only one fragment of something larger. Viability. Convinced that more stones are scattered beneath the land, the creature orders the digging to continue. The tunnels eventually break into an ancient burial chamber packed with skeletal remains and rusted armor. Viability. Using necromantic power, the Lord of Death revives the dead into skeletal laborers. Stronger and more efficient than the golems, the undead soldiers accelerate the excavation process as the underground network expands deeper beneath the mountain. Viability, years, and eventually decades pass as the digging operation grows. During one excavation, the workers encounter giant, red-eyed, burrowing moles. Recognizing their natural ability to tunnel through earth, the Lord of Death tames the beasts and adds them to the growing workforce. Viability. With the moles leading the excavation efforts, the operation's speed increases dramatically. The combined labor of golems, skeletons, and moles eventually uncovers a second massive black stone. Viability. The Lord of Death celebrates the discovery, convinced its growing army will eventually locate every monolith hidden underground. That celebration is abruptly interrupted when a violent tremor shakes the entire cavern system. Viability. The ceiling explodes apart as a white-haired girl crashes down from above, delivering a devastating flying kick directly into the Lord of Death. The impact shatters the skeletal ruler's body and throws the underground army into chaos. Viability. Before the Lord of Death can recover, the girl unleashes dragon fire that engulfs the remains of the creature. Instead of destroying it completely, the overwhelming magical energy triggers an unexpected transformation. Viability, the skeletal form dissolves, leaving behind a young, blonde-haired girl wrapped in an oversized green cloak. Confused and disoriented, the girl possesses no memories of her former identity. The story shifts back to the surface village at dawn. Viability, near the outdoor hot springs, the progenitor returns from the underground expedition alongside his maid attendant. Viability meeting with Hiraku. He explains that a dangerous force beneath the land had been orchestrating a massive underground operation, but Hakuren intervened and defeated the threat. Viability. When Hiraku asks where Hakuren is, the maid points nearby, revealing the exhausted dragon asleep with her head resting on Flora's lap. Standing beside them is the mysterious green-cloaked girl recovered from the underground cavern. Viability, the progenitor calmly reveals that the quiet child was actually the mastermind behind the underground monster horde. Hiraku finds the claim difficult to believe, noting that the innocent-looking girl hardly resembles a terrifying undead ruler. Viability. The progenitor explains how the original enemy appeared as a powerful undead skeleton. During the battle, Hakuren repeatedly kicked, stomped, and blasted the creature with dragon fire. Viability. Instead of being annihilated, the magical overload stripped away its dark form entirely, reducing it to this childlike state with complete amnesia. Curious, Hiraku kneels down and gently asks the girl if she remembers her name. Ability. After a long silence, she suddenly blurts out, "Urza." Hiraku smiles warmly and asks if she remembers anything else, but Urza happily admits she has absolutely no other memories. Accepting her situation, Hiraku welcomes her into the village. Ability Flora notices Urza's unusual hair, which subtly changes color when sunlight passes through it. She recalls an old legend describing the hero queen Urbraza, whose jewel-like hair shifted colors in the light. Viability, the group briefly wonders whether the mysterious girl could somehow be the legendary ruler reborn, though nobody can confirm the theory. Viability. Since Urza is still covered in soot and dirt from the cavern, the maid suggests bringing her to the newly completed hot springs for a proper bath. Hiraku agrees immediately and invites the progenitor to join the men's bath as well. Inside the hot springs, Hiraku and the progenitor relax in the steaming water while discussing the underground tunnels. Viability, the progenitor explains that the tunnels intersect directly with the strange black stones and suspects they were part of a larger magical structure. Ability, a detailed map illustrates the layout of the tunnels, the locations of the monoliths, and the chamber where the Lord of Death was found. Hiraku remarks that the stones appear dangerous and could become a future threat. Viability, the progenitor agrees, suggesting they should seal the underground passages permanently to protect the nearby giant clan. Meanwhile, in the women's bath, the maid patiently washes Urza's long hair while the restless child loudly protests the strict cleaning routine. Viability. Once the dirt is finally removed, Urza excitedly dives into the bathwater and begins splashing around. The peaceful atmosphere is interrupted when Hakuren and Flora enter the bathhouse. Hakuren yawns sleepily, irritated that she was dragged away from her nap. The moment Urza spots her, she immediately sticks out her tongue and makes a mocking face, reigniting the playful rivalry between them. After the bath, Kiabet stretches her wings on the balcony and announces that she must return to the Garlic Kingdom to resume her duties as a high-ranking priestess. Viability. Though she boasts about her importance, Flora jokingly points out how much time she spends causing trouble in the village. Laughing off the criticism, Kiabet takes flight and disappears into the snowy skies. Viability. Later, Hiraku leads an inspection team into the cleared underground area containing the first black stone. The monolith stands upright within the cavern, glowing faintly blue. Viability. As the group studies the site, Hiraku notices a strange purple mist leaking from the base of the stone. When he asks Lu if she can see it, she admits the ground looks completely normal to her. Viability. Realizing the dark aura may only react to him, Hiraku cautiously approaches the stone. Using his divine farming tool, Hiraku strikes the mist, instantly dispersing it into the air. The others watch in confusion as Hiraku explains that some kind of sinister energy is leaking from the monolith. Lu suggests simply destroying the stone, but Hakuren warns that the monolith is incredibly durable and smashing it recklessly could collapse the cavern. Viability. Instead, Hiraku decides to use the transformative power of his divine tool to carve the stone rather than destroy it. Channeling his energy, he reshapes the tool into a chisel and begins sculpting the black rock. Viability. As he works, the purple mist gradually disappears and the monolith emits a clean, radiant glow. When Hiraku finishes, the once ominous stone has been transformed into a majestic statue of the creation god. Viability. The progenitor immediately falls to his knees in reverence, declaring that burying such a sacred sculpture would be unforgivable. To To protect the holy site, he creates several stone gargoyles to guard the monument. Viability. These magical sentinels will automatically attack any evil presence that approaches. Back in the village council room, Hiraku sketches a diagram connecting the locations of the discovered stones. Viability. The pattern reveals that the monoliths form a giant heptagon surrounding the territory. The progenitor estimates that 4 more stones remain undiscovered and proposes excavating at specific surface coordinates to locate them. A large-scale engineering project soon begins. Village workers spread throughout the surrounding forests, while the lizard men handle the heavy labor of digging and hauling stone. Spellcasters assist by blasting through stubborn bedrock with magic. The excavation quickly becomes the harshest project the village has ever undertaken. Viability. Workers break into underground rivers that flood the tunnels, while hidden nests of dangerous red-eyed creatures constantly threaten the crews. Despite exhaustion and mounting stress, the villagers continue pushing forward under the progenitor's guidance. Eventually, the deepest shaft finally breaks through the final layer of rock, revealing the 7th and final black stone. The exhausted workers collapse in relief and celebration as sunlight pours into the cavern, confirming that the heptagon formation is complete. Viability. Later, the progenitor relaxes with Hiraku at the hot springs and admits that the final excavation stages were extremely unsettling. However, he reveals another reason for his enthusiasm. Opability. Opening an ancient book filled with illustrations of gods and divine figures, the progenitor excitedly points out that they now possess 6 additional monoliths ready for carving. He eagerly asks Hiraku to sculpt a different deity into each one so they can create an entire pantheon of sacred statues. The episode opens in the middle of a lively celebration in the Great Tree Village. Hiraku Machio, the village chief, raises a mug and welcomes everyone back from their expedition to the hot spring region. The villagers, including high elves, lizard men, and various magical creatures, cheer and enjoy a massive spread of food and wine. Among the crowd, the high elves discuss a recent encounter where a giant monster burst from the ground. While the expedition was tough, everyone agrees that the hot springs provided a much-needed respite. As Hiraku circulates through the tavern, he notices an unfamiliar black cat sleeping peacefully on a table alongside the wine slime, one of Kuro's wolf pups, and one of Zabuton's spiderlings. Hiraku strikes up a conversation with progenitor, Vampire Lord, who remarks on how festive the village is. When Hiraku points out the cat, a quick flashback reveals how the creature arrived. When Hiraku first returned to the village, he stumbled upon the small black cat inside his home. The cat seemed remarkably calm, eventually rolling over onto its back in a gesture of submission. Since none of the villagers claimed the cat, Hiraku decided to pet it and let it stay, noting that it got along perfectly fine with the wolves and spiders. The truth behind the cat's origin is far more dramatic than Hiraku realizes. The scene shifts to an internal monologue from the cat, who reveals himself to be an ancient archfiend, an evil incarnate who was defeated by the gods thousands of years ago and sealed deep beneath the earth. For millennia, the archfiend bided his time, sending out fragments of his dark aura to influence the surface world, manipulate rulers, and plot his ultimate revenge. However, his plans were completely undone by Hiraku. When the villagers dug up 7 mysterious black stones, Hiraku carved them into statues of the gods to purify the area. This act inadvertently supercharged the seals trapping the archfiend. The sudden, intense influx of divine energy was too much for the sealed entity to bear. Overwhelmed by the agonizing power of the statues, the archfiend's consciousness faded, and his massive dark form collapsed. When he finally woke up, he discovered that his immense magical power was completely gone, and his body had been transformed into an ordinary, harmless black cat. Seeing no other option, the former supreme evil decided to accept his fate and surrender to a comfortable life of being pampered in the village. High above the mortal realm, the god of creation and a goddess looked down upon the village. The goddess asks what they should do about the archfiend's current state. The god of creation explains that Hiraku's hand-carved statues acted as both a divine punishment and a form of salvation for the archfiend. By living out his days as a cat, the archfiend can safely deplete his remaining malice before eventually ascending back to the heavens. The goddess jokes that Hiraku is essentially acting as a proxy for the gods, though the god of creation notes that Hiraku has no interest in such titles and should be left to enjoy his peaceful life. The segment ends with the god lamenting his own 300-year punishment, sitting in Seiza, for accidentally dropping Hiraku into the dangerous forest of death in the first place, jokingly wishing that Hiraku would carve a better, more flattering statue of him instead of the old man version currently in the village. The next morning, the village is back to its routine. A young girl named Urza, who who has lost her memories but remains incredibly energetic, is looking for someone to play with. She tries to pester the village maids, but they are busy cleaning up after breakfast. Urza then turns to Hakuren, a dragon who resides in the village in human form. Hakuren is currently taking a break from teaching the village children how to read and write. When Urza demands to play, Hakuren claims she is too tired and goes to bed. Hiraku notes that Hakuren still seems a bit distant around Urza. The maids explain that Urza likely holds a lingering, subconscious fear of Hakuren, stemming from a past encounter where Hakuren forcefully subverted her during a conflict. Hiraku hopes they can find a way to bridge the gap between them. Later, Hiraku finds Urza playing in the garden, trying to mold a figure out of mud. She wants to create a moving golem, but the mud lacks the structural integrity to stand up and repeatedly collapses into a puddle. Seeing this, Hakuren steps in to help. She reveals a massive, glowing dragon scale from her clothes. Hakuren explains that dragons naturally shed these scales when they transform, meaning the village has an entire storehouse full of them because they are too valuable to throw away. Hakuren crushes the incredibly durable scale into a fine powder using her bare hands, a feat that normally requires a massive magic furnace. She mixes the powder into Urza's mud pie. The magical properties of the dragon scale instantly fortify the mud, allowing the small clay doll to animate, stand up, and wave its arms. Urza is ecstatic and hugs Hakuren, thanking her enthusiastically. The two share a high five, successfully breaking the ice and forming a new friendship. However, the animated clay doll proves to be a bit too strong. While playing outside, the tiny doll casually punches a massive stack of timber, completely shattering the logs and sending them flying. Hiraku and the High Elves look on in disbelief, realizing that even a tiny amount of dragon scale can turn a simple toy into a remarkably destructive force. The final segment of the episode focuses on the Mountain Elves, Ya, Hiterto, and their companions. Known for their intense curiosity and manual dexterity, the Mountain Elves have established a workshop in the village dedicated to inventing new tools and machinery. Hiraku visits the workshop and requests a new piece of cooking equipment. He explains the basic concept of heat retention, noting that placing a heavy lid on a pot helps cook vegetables and meat much faster. He asks if they can design a pot with a highly secure lid to make stews more efficiently. The Mountain Elves immediately get to work, sketching out blueprints and hammering away at sheet metal. Their first prototype is a heavy iron pot, but during testing, the steam pressure continuously blows the lid completely off. Realizing they need more strength, they reinforce the design with heavy-duty metal clamps around the rim. When Hiraku returns to check on their progress, he is shocked to see a crude, industrial-looking pressure cooker vibrating violently on the stove. He warns them that sealing a pot completely without a release valve is incredibly dangerous. Right on cue, the pressure cooker explodes, blasting the lid into the ceiling beams and coating the workshop in hot gray sludge. Instead of being discouraged, the Mountain Elves look at the devastation and wonder if the exploding pot could be weaponized to defend the village from invaders. Drawing a quick reprimand from Hiraku. Undeterred by their failure, the Mountain Elves move on to their next project, inspired by a passing comment Hiraku once made about a machine that could relieve muscle tension and soothe a tired body. They unveil a massive wooden contraption with complex internal gears, pulleys, and a hand crank. They invite one of the village maids to test it out, noting that they designed it specifically for people whose jobs require heavy lifting. Before the maid sits down, Hiraku suggests they test the machine's power on an inanimate object first. They place a large, solid green pumpkin on the seat and engage the mechanism. A massive wooden piston shoots down with terrifying speed, completely obliterating the pumpkin into tiny fragments and shattering the wooden crate underneath. The Mountain Elves proudly declare that the machine has plenty of power, while Hiraku sweatingly realizes they have essentially built an execution device rather than a relaxation chair. The maids politely suggest adding an adjustable power setting, while Hiraku flatly refuses to ever sit in it, pointing out that his shoulders are definitely softer than a pumpkin. For their final invention, Hiraku reviews a set of blueprints featuring a heavy metal coil spring. He initially asked the elves to make springs so he could build comfortable mattresses and sofas for the village homes. However, the Mountain Elves accidentally manufactured the springs far too large and rigid for domestic use. Hiraku suggests that these heavy springs might be useful for large vehicles, such as carriages. The Mountain Elves take this idea and run with it. They enlist the help of Lasti, a dragon in human form, to fly them to a neighboring town, where they purchase a standard commercial horse carriage from a merchant named Michael. Back at the workshop, they attempt to install their oversized coil springs onto the carriage's axle. Unfortunately, the springs are too stiff, causing the carriage to tilt backward awkwardly under its own weight. Ya refuses to give up, declaring that if the suspension is wrong, they just need to make it stronger. They mix in more dragon scale powder to fortify the metal and rebuild the system. During the next test flight, the carriage is modified with massive, treaded off-road tires and a glowing, supercharged spring suspension. One of the elves drives the carriage down a massive wooden ramp at high speed, launching the vehicle high into the sky. The carriage sails over the tree line, bouncing wildly across the landscape like a monster truck as the magical springs absorb the impact. While the elves cheer at the absurd altitude, Hiraku watches the flying carriage with a look of pure exhaustion, reminding them that transport vehicles are not supposed to fly. Ultimately, after a long process of trial and error, the mountain elves compromise. They abandon the volatile coil springs and successfully implement a traditional practical plate spring, leaf spring suspension layout. They install this new suspension on both the village carriage and the Centaur's cargo wagons, significantly improving ride comfort and earning widespread praise from the villagers. The episode ends with the mountain elves celebrating their success, looking over a room full of complex whirring gadgets, ready to tackle their next bizarre invention.